for the first split. Listen, for anybody it's not super memorable on what happened the first time these two teams played this year, it was crazy work, and we will fill you in on that, so you are as excited for this as we are.
It seems like almost any time these two teams face off, magic happens, fireworks fly, and we hope the same thing matters here, because the stakes certainly are present. As you take a look at the bottom of your screen, AL at 7-2, BLG at 6-3, but the way that the game score is currently set up, if BLG win this series, they will be the #1 seed. If anyone's Legends win this, they will be the #1 seed. So a lot riding on this. You get potentially better matchups in the playoffs and a better opportunity to be a representative from the LPL at first stand, which is, of course, what both of these teams are certainly fighting for. So without further ado, let's get into the teams that will be taken to the Rift tonight. Starting off with anyone's Legend. They were, I would say overall, Callum, the best team over in the LPL in 2025. And guess what? They changed nothing, and they're on a 6-game win streak here in Group Ascend.
I gotta pick you up with the asterisk on that. Their roster changed nothing, but we've mentioned it so many times this year for a reason. The one thing that did change was coaching staff. With Tabe stepping away, that most iconic coach, I would say just in general, really. He's up there for a good reason. So many of the reasons that AL did well last year were incredible drafting prowess. Thus far, AL have managed to keep themselves at the top of the table with all of the same roster as mentioned player-wise, and it has been, personally, my main man Tarzan continuing to look like the GOAT jungler, and with Kanavi exiting from the league to jump over to LCK, he's really kind of uncontested at the top of the table if we're looking at for... These two were the top two, generally speaking, back and forth for the past few years. Shun obviously jumped up there a few times along with others, but Tarzan, the consistency on this man has been impeccable.
Yeah, and when you look at what AL have been able to do to go on this 6-game win streak after starting off the season 1-2, Tarzan is a large part of that. I would give some credit to Kyle as well in the support role, who in my opinion is playing like the best support in the LPL. We got some clips here just to showcase what exactly they have been doing. Good. A lot of team fighting, and specifically over these past couple of weeks, I feel like their main carries in Shanks and Hope have also been stepping up.
Absolutely. Hope has such a clutch team fight here, really maximizing the MF value to get themselves where and Flandre, he's been relatively quiet, but in the last time with these two teams played, we did see that 5-man definitely not Malphite ultimate from the Rek'Sai W. So we know when the stakes are up, all of these players come to play in incredible fashion. I'm super excited to see what we end up getting from AL compositionally. In the last game they played, you just may have caught it there in the clip, that was Flandre playing the Neferi top lane in counter to Varus top lane. Really, really interesting meta development that we've had coming in. And with Tarzan, my favourite player, as mentioned, picking up the Sejuani, his top champion, maximizing these OP utility items, building all 3 of the new items, Zeke's, Bandle Pipes, and that Protoplasm Harness. Just... I hope we get another Sejuani game today, because it really looked disgusting.
You might be the only person on this planet who's hoping that Tarzan plays Sejuani, but you know what?
Yes.
That's how I know that we're casting with a true jungler here who really appreciates just all the levels of things. And when AL are working right, they can have Tarzan play that utility role because they're a well-oiled machine, 5-man through, everybody playing their role. But when you take a look at their opponents in BLG, they're less the well-oiled machine and more of the crazy beast that you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of every single time they take the Rift. Superstars through and through, obviously, but inconsistently since, about the middle of the season, they've had some very interesting situations pop up. Drama always follows this team, and that's no exception here in 2026.
Yeah, we typically prefer it when it's drama on the Rift, you know, in the gameplay, but not always been the case. We'll jump to that in a moment, but as far as the roster has been performing, I think that people are happy, kind of. Like, at the end of the day, we expected BLG to be top of the standings. The fact that they have to win this series to be up there is not exactly where they want to be, dropping both series against JDG being the main opposition that was able to make both of these top-of-the-table teams bleed, just not able to hold up that performance against the rest of the league. And then, obviously, BLG, they took the first series away from AL when they faced before. If they hadn't dropped an off series over to TES throughout, the split so far, then we'd be looking at this with completely inverted expectations at this point.
Yeah, and, you know, we can't talk about BLG without addressing that elephant in the room, or perhaps the big bin in the room, and that is, of course, the top lane situation that unfolded a couple of weeks ago. A lot of interesting things that we were following. I remember waking up and just scrolling through all of the drama that ended up going on. Obviously, that has all kind of been set aside. Bin has been back with the team. And since then, it seems like they're starting to find their stride again. Obviously, that loss against TS was not great, but they, of course, have won their last 2 series, are back on the up and up. And if you take a look at some of the clips here, it seems like everything is kind of working well again.
Yes, I think that has to come back to Shun in the jungle. When I compare these two junglers and what they mean for the team, I think of Tarzan as the starting pistol for AL. When he says go, they go. And Shun is the flex tape. He brings this roster back together and keeps them cohesive. And it's mainly been working with that main man in the mid lane, Knight. I think that's got to be, by the way, an all-time record for time speaking about BLG without bringing up Knight. But there's a reason for that. This guy is incredible and does so much for the team. And with Shun back at his side, going back to, correct me if I'm wrong, 2024, when they were last playing together, they have looked so good. So good. That mid-jungle synergy has been back out of nowhere. And we do get to see some more of the craziness that happened last time these two teams played.
Yeah, this has been basically the story of this season for BLG is, you know, started off super hot with that 4-game win streak, then had the drama ensued 3-game losing streak, and now they're back on a 2-game match streak, looking to hopefully make it 3 to earn themselves that top spot in the LPL Ascend group going into the postseason. And of course, we mentioned the junglers as being very important in this game, but a lot of what Shun does is set up Knight, who is, in many of our opinions, playing like one of the best players in the league. And if you think the same thing, make sure to scan that QR code right there, because we are doing Community All-Pro ballots here for the LPL English broadcast. We'll be showcasing them by the time the playoffs begin. And I think we both want to make the case for Knight here, Colin, because this guy has been so good, just basically throughout his career, but really specifically over the past couple of seasons, looking like one of the best players in the world.
100%. Pretty much the widest champion pool of any player, full stop. And when that's coming from the mid lane role, that is truly saying something. We have really, especially when Fearless wasn't in the game, just got so used to see Orianna, see the other standard picks. But even then, Knight was bringing out complete wacky picks from everywhere in the champion variety. Those melee champions, he's known for his Silas. The range champions, I mean, he brought Ziggs out, and it's something that has kind of enabled answers to what is the one champion I've yet to mention, being that thorn in Knight's side thus far.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the champion pools and some of the struggles that he's had on certain champions as the series does end up going around. But for the most part, Knight, Champion Ocean, able to perform on basically anything and can be a big carry here for BLG. And you know, he kind of has had to be that big carry recently. I mean, Bin obviously had a great start to the year, but you know, had that little lull in the middle of the season, and I feel like we're still waiting for Viper to fully show his form. We've seen flashes of that Viper who was the best AD carry in the world, who won Worlds back here in the LPL 5 seasons ago, but it hasn't always all been there. It feels like there's been moments where other AD carries are kind of outperforming him. It doesn't feel like that is the case here for Knight, and until everybody else gets back into form, he has been what has helped BLG continue to be at the position that they're in right now, to where they are playing for first place against anyone's legend.
Completely agree. I think as far as just consistency goes, it's always been Knight number 1 or number 2 for BLG throughout every game we've played, and then it's been fluctuating. Is Bin having a good game? Is Viper having a good game? Is On getting a clutch engage? Is Shun continuing to just keep Knight in the game? It's been something that I think the tale of the solo lanes will really be how this series shakes out. The first time these two teams played this year, which was, again, at the start of the split, I believe it was only the second series played for at least one, if not both, of the two teams, we had Bin and Knight pick up at least a couple hundred gold, if not thousands of gold, individual leads, pre-15 minutes, in 6 of those matchups, 5 out of 6 of those matchups. The only instance where BLG solo laner was not ahead of the AL equivalent was when Knight was playing Azir.
So something we'll have to watch in terms of pick and ban once we do get into this. I believe AL is going to be first pick here in this first game of the series, which will be starting momentarily, as of course we are getting all the players set up here in our final series of the regular season. Reminder, not necessarily the final series before the play-in / Knights Road does begin. There is a tiebreaker match tomorrow, so in case you were worried that you weren't going to be seeing any more LPL English for the next couple of days, don't worry. You got one more day. You got NIP versus WE in just a few short hours. But without further ado, it's time to introduce the teams, bring them on out for our final series of the regular season. AL on a 6-game winning streak. They're the hottest team right now in the LPL. And they're going up against BLG, potentially got the most stars in the league themselves.
I just can't do anything but grin right now. Like, this is so exciting. Just, I know I said it earlier. The first series these two teams played was so good. In the production chat, everybody was just saying thank you for existing, BLG versus AL. Thank you for assigning me to this broadcast, BLG versus AL. It was so good. Just titans of the league before we had any idea what exactly we were going to be expecting from either of them. Because, reminder, Demacia Cup, AL did not field this roster. We didn't know what form they were going to come into, at least individually. We obviously knew how this 5-stack played together. And for BLG, they were playing without Knight and didn't look too hot, honestly, as the 4-stack with sub-mid. So, the fact that we got to see such incredible quality League of Legends, just S-tier stuff, I am absolutely ready for that, and I am manifesting that this goes to 3 games.
Or just 2 really competitive games like we saw in that last series. Almost just as good. As you can see, the teams walking out right now in their Chinese New Year red jackets, handing out some envelopes of good fortune to the fans in the arena as well. Really fun to see, as of course we will be taking a short break after the conclusion of Knights Road for celebration of the Chinese New Year. And then we'll be right back into it to playoffs. We get our first teams set for first stand. And we talk about first stand. We talk about these internationals here, Melvin, as well. It feels like these are 2 teams that could very well be representing the LPL at that tournament, much like they had in essentially the last 2 major internationals in MSI and Worlds.
I think it's very much the safe bet to say that this is foreshadowing for the finals, to see who will be the 1 versus 2 seed going into first stand. Obviously, we still have an entire playoff bracket to go until then, but considering we know these 2 teams will be in Group Ascend next split, will be in playoffs this split, I think you've got pretty good odds that, if not both, at least one of these teams will be representing at the first slot.
And, you know, AL, kind of business as usual. They have been that kind of dominant team, consistent team, remaining with the same roster, of course, all the way through. On the other side, though, for BLG, they felt like their performance internationally wasn't enough despite some of that domestic success, despite winning the last split of the LPL. But remember, completely fell apart by the time they got to the Swiss stage. So they decided some changes needed to be made. They brought in Chun, returning from the organization for the last time they made it to World Finals. And potentially the biggest change of the offseason was Viper going in and joining a BLG. Hasn't fully worked out just yet, as there have been inconsistencies here and there, like a BLG season traditionally does possess. But the hope is that the upside will be better than what was able to be provided in 2025. And this is the time to show it. Obviously, the consistency, maybe having the longer track record for AL has taken them this far. But at this point in the season, BLG have had a lot of time together. And now it is a time for them to fully show their form as we get ourselves ready for the postseason to begin.
100%, and with Hope being the opposite number in the bottom lane for this series, I think that is another place where we need to be looking, because while Viper hasn't really hit those top tier ceilings, there was a reason that the whole it's Viper Life Esports last year was the case, because he truly was the man who would put the team on his back. Was it necessary a lot of the time? Yes. Has it been necessary thus far with BLG? Who's to say? There's been some games where we would have appreciated the entirety of BLG on Viper's back. But my hope is it's just going to be a bit of extra time before we see Viper start to reach those absolute peaks and then continue to just be the master of consistency. Whereas Hope, on the other side, I personally, as a new person to the league, would not say Hope has felt like the most consistent man. could add the preface of on AL, you can add the preface of in the ADC role. But what that does mean is when I see Hope actually pop off, as in one of those clip team fights we saw before the game, he truly can put out more value than really any other in the league as far as, except for Elk, who, you know, we saw him do his pop-offs earlier today.
Yeah.
Elk's looked kind of incredible, you know, got respect game, but there is always the hope that we get to see both of these two reach that peak ceiling for this matchup where they know the stakes are everything to play for.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what Hope has been able to bring to this AL lineup, it feels like he's the guy that can consistently play high-level AD carry when the team is ahead, but you don't necessarily feel comfortable relying on him to be that big difference maker to like to be the X factor in a series. And honestly, I feel the same about Viper throughout the first 9 series of 2026. Just has not looked like that big star just yet. Just had whatever it may be, not being able to mesh well with On, not being able to fully integrate in this team. Obviously a great player. I would, you know, he's probably a top 3, top 4 player in the league right now, but not the superstar that we thought we were going to be getting when he moved over to the LPL just yet. It's gonna happen at some point, and maybe this is the series that it does, but it hasn't been the instant come and be the best in the league. Obviously, I've dropped some series since then. And I think that the fact that, you know, we haven't had that full superstar potential be unlocked is a reason why.
One thing I will point out, though, is even when BLG lost their first game against AL, Viperon still got a solo kill, or better said, 2v2 kills in their lane, despite losing that game later on. So, as far as this particular bot lane matchup has looked, in the one best of 3, mind you, series we've got to see between the two of them, BLG's bot lane has been getting the upper hand as we start to get into the bans, all of the usual suspects off the table. Will we see Azir banned, BLG, or are we taking it first? God bless!
They're going to take it away because we'll get into it if Knight ends up picking it up, but this is also a champion that Shanks has a ton of comfort on in his own right. Does mean that the Miniko has been left up. This is one of both On and Kyle's most preferred champions, I would say, throughout the last couple of seasons. So no surprise to see that get locked in early. Now we'll see what BLG want to prioritize. You know, noticing things like the Jarvan are potentially available for the taking if Shun wants an easy playmaker. Maybe they go down into the mid lane pool and get Knight something he feels comfortable on.
It's an interesting one. I don't know if it will be picked this early on, but in the last series they played, AL did ban Karma against On in every single game they played. So I'm quite curious to see if we will potentially see a Karma pickup later on into this draft, or potentially a second rotation ban. As now it is just trying to see which of those prio picks BLG want to snap up ahead of this second set of picks for AL. It will be very standard. Ryze and Zao, but it must be said the Ryze and Sivir combo, with the Shen support, we're probably not going to see that one this game, was the thing that pushed BLG over the edge to win the game 3 of their last matchup, utilizing that early rotations and map mobility as that is something.
Yeah, I was wondering if we were going to get the Anivia answer into Ryze. That's something that's been really popping up in all across the League of Legends scene, not only here in the LPL, where I feel like it really originated at some point. The Cassio, also a traditional answer into this pick. You'll be able to stifle a lot of that, you know, power and push that the Ryze does end up having. So with that being said, a strong mid jungle opened up by anyone's legend as we finish out the first phase of this draft. It will be the Mbessa, picked up blind for Bin. Now this could potentially, who am I kidding? This is not going to get swapped around. This will be a top lane Mbessa, and we're going to see some counters banned away here, likely something like the Renekton or maybe even a Varus.
Does mean now with the way that this pick order is going to go, there's going to be all to play for regarding banning out these bottom lane champions. BLG, they're going to knock off some of the more standard top lane picks, but AL, they could just either keep limiting that support pool from On, maybe take out the Alistar as one that could potentially mute the Nico engage later. It depends on whether they want to focus on getting a beneficial lane matchup, in which case you don't mind letting some of those melee supports through, or, as we see here, banning away some of the range ones to make sure that you can play and get that winning lane for AL in the bottom lane.
Yep, the Sion ban makes sense. It is essentially a handshake where the Mbessa can get ahead early, but then the Sion's going to be Sion, and Flandre, one of the better Sions that we have in the world, especially when he's put on that island on the weak So gonna have to be resorting to something else. As we see On continue to get targeted, but the Karma not left unbanned at this point. It is still available. We'll see if that, alongside maybe a Caitlyn here for Viper, that could be a fun 2v2.
It's definitely on the table. It's kind of a weird one of you would pick the Caitlyn first because you know AL wouldn't then be able to take the Karma away from you. However, they might just be trying to think of what ADCs AL would like to pick up and pick up something like the Varus here, who is a more standard, fits into both comps decently well, can play the variety of styles, and more of a pick away. I do love the idea of a Sivir in this draft because there's going to be a lot of close range scrapping, a lot of running at each other. Kai'Sa can serve a similar purpose. Don't dislike that, but I think I want to see something that can pump out a lot of damage for AL, particularly from Hope, and the Sivir does hit all of the buttons that we need AL to do in this comp.
Have some wave clear, have some late game damage, and just have a good ability to stay alive in this.
Ok anh em ơi, đến với cái ván đấu đầu tiên của cặp đấu thứ hai ngày hôm nay giữa BLG Gaming và AL thôi. Game đấu này thì BLG Gaming là bên phía đội xanh, còn AL sẽ là bên phía đỏ anh em nhé. Hôm nay gãy nhiều quá nên hơi buồn. Bọn nó bịp điên. Game 1 này thì làm cái phiếu tham đi. Kiểu không có duyên với cái LPL ấy.
Good recognition that this is not going to be a slow game played with poke. This is going to be a game where everybody's looking at each other and then somebody jumps in and all hell breaks loose. So I'm so sorry. You're going to have a rough time this game, my dearest play-by-play.
That's what I love. That's what we're here for, baby. That's what this is. Chaos. Name of the game here in the LPL. When I take a look at the drafts, though, I feel like AL have better go buttons, right? They have easier tools to start engages with. You have Flandre who can jump in. You have Tarzan with that Grand Starfall. Even Kyle sneaking in with a minion as that Pop Blossom. BLG really relying on an Mbessa ultimate or Wind Becomes Lightning from Shun to start things off. And I feel like in that situation, having a little bit more of a conditional engage could mean that AL could have the advantage in terms of just being able to start fights on their own terms, which is always a very important thing to have in this.
Anh em vào like cho em Hổ xin một like, một sub nha anh em ơi.
It's noted that while BLG lack the tools to go in first, they do have excellent tools to keep you away. Between the Xin Zhao ultimate, the Lulu ultimate, even just running into Varus Rise conceptually is a scary prospect. And the Cassio typically wants you to run at them. So this is going to be a weird situation for Shanks to play through in these team fights. Obviously, we've got a ways to go before then. We've got to think about how the laning phase matchups goes and if that gets shook out in BLG's favor.
When you think of the LPL in 25, 26, you think of these two teams. One of them going to end up as the first seed in the 2026 Split 1 playoffs. Let's do it. It's game 1 between BLG and AL.
These are the Gyos I was promised.
Yeah, we haven't been getting them in Group Nirvana as much, but today the Gyos have been incredible. Maybe it's some New Year's buff as well, but I'll take it as we get some heavy summoner spell usage here before the minions even come in. These guys are coming to party.
To make sure you get control of this lane as soon as possible, particularly when there are these level 3 gankable junglers in the game, is always something you've got to be wary of. Either side could make their way down if the health bars get too low.
As you can see, the importance and the emphasis for both Hope and Viper to get that level 2 first is going to be won out by the Varus Lulu lane, as they're going to get first push here and likely get those first 3 melee minions to unlock that level 2 power spike. They also have their own jungler in the area at this point, but they are pathing away. Which means that Shun will not be around the level 3, level 4 mark. Perhaps good to get that early push now to make sure that you are able to at least maintain some dominance and not be in a position to get ganked later.
Precisely. If you can get the bounce back so that you're in a safe enough position by the time Pantheon is down there, then you're doing quite well. As stated, Tarzan is the main man for this roster that gets done, but instead it does look like BLG are just looking to secure that push prio so Shun can get in there and take stuff away from Tarzan.
It's me and invade. Yeah, so instead of going for the full clear, try to match Tarzan at his blue buff. Gonna spot that ward and now go in for the steal of the wolves. Tarzan smites away the big one, which is of course the most important, but denies some XP, as now On is walking straight into the Tribush, just gonna phase check it and die. First blood to anyone's legend. On's brain seemingly off for that one, and now Shun in some danger as well. Kyle running in to make sure that Shun is not able to...
Hôm nay AEL sẽ thắng BLG Gaming.
Did he think he was on Alistair? I don't know what just happened there. That was objectively not correct. Okay, cool. Well, that kind of stifles the play for BLG, but they make a counter on mid.
In trouble as well. Yeah, that's an easy kill. It seemed like Shanks was in a position to get away from that rune prison, but opted against it and still ends up burning his flash. So, two interesting kills, to say the least, has evened up our game.
Yeah, capital INT interesting, absolutely. Shanks and On handshaking to keep this game interesting in the early. As Shun will be able to walk over and secure one of the scuttle crabs, but as we take what is probably a breather, there's no way... What is happening?
On is playing like he's an 80 carry in this game when he really is not. Just going to dodge away from the tangle barbs there. A little early, does provide a little bit of a punch, but fighting over these
Trận này lại chan nhau nhiều đấy anh em ạ.
A choice at this point in the game, and so taking stock of how that has left things, the mid jungle for BLG.
Thằng BLG Gaming mùa này đánh toàn chan nhau. Ê.
But on the other side, Hope and Kyle get out of this lane that is potentially going to be one that BLG were able to control early on.
And we do see Tarzan walking over there trying to contest the second Raptors respawn. Will not be able to steal that away, but does have his own camps to get back to. Partly that vision control that we saw on Fort so difficult for is going to be enough to ward away the AL jungler, as we briefly, I'm going to say briefly because so far this game has not disappointed with non-stop action, but briefly have a moment where neither jungler is in a position to exactly fish for a gank, but they are both on sides of the map where lanes are in beneficial positions should they go wandering. Will just be Tarzan going for the full clear. Shun does not want to impact that bottom lane. Listen, as soon as level 6 gets ticked over, I'm not going to be surprised if we see a Grand Starfall pressed off cooldown to make something happen.
Not an easy target, as all four laners, I should say, on BLG do have their flashes, but certainly an opportunity to at least burn some of those. Get your lanes in a good spot. I think the bot lane certainly can be something that the AL can take advantage of. And Hope is a little bit ahead in terms of experience at this point. Tangle Barbs also land onto On. He has to burn the heal again, taken down to below 200 HP. And that's almost going to be another kill. That Q not doing enough damage, as the sad B on BLG On is going to be forced to head back to base once again.
And he makes it rough, as finally this tower is going to start to get ticked down. Throwing down poke, curious if they're going to go for the cancel on the reset, but with only one person in the lane, it does mean Viper will get a bit extra XP in his pocket off of these minion waves. Might lead to a potential surprise level 6 angle from the Varus if we do see something happen. We have Knight now with the Realm Warp available. Can look to go on Shanks here, who is still no flash, but does unlock Petrifying Gaze just in time.
See if they still want to make this happen. It worked once, and now Shanks does not have a flash, although as you mentioned, does have the ulti. A lot of time being spent here in the mid lane for Shun, but there's not much to clear out. Waiting for that second spawn of the Raptors to come back around. Dragon is available. Tarzan waiting for that crab, looks like, to make sure he's able to stay ahead in the farm game. Currently up about a camp.
Actually, I don't know if this is going to knock him up to level 6. Normally it would, but we did actually have Shun steal away the 2 small wolves, so this is going to be quite narrow. If he doesn't get the level 6, that is quite a bit of a skirmishing power lost. It is only level 5 for the Pantheon. Mitigates some of that early pressure where he would have had map priority to do something right now.
Instead, a little bit more farming, and I think that's probably for the better, considering some of the decisions that were made earlier on in this game. It looked like they both were testing the waters a little bit.
6 phút trôi qua, hai bên có được cho mình một mạng và AL lợi thế hơn đâu đó là tầm 400 vàng nhờ cái chiến công đầu rơi vào tay của Hope.
With the fact that Viper is going for the on-hit Varus, right? If you were going for more of the poke, maybe you want to skirmish a little bit earlier on. But now with that late game win condition alongside Knight, definitely feels like BLG are also okay with scaling in this game.
Definitely want to circle that one of the late game win condition. The on-hit Varus takes probably the longest of any of the Varus builds to come online. Needs at least 1 to 2 items, 2 to 3 items, sorry, before it starts to actually pump out significant damage. Before then, you still have the Varus ultimate, so you're not useless in team fights by any means. But with Hope getting that first gifted kill and being able to sneakily grab a cull in the meantime as well, does mean this Sivir who is one of the best champions at accelerating herself in gold by just hoovering up farm, should be getting a bit stronger than Viper before these team fights really start to roll on. Unless we see some major jungle intervention, I expect this to just be kind of a calm lane. Thing is about Sivir with the spell shield and Nico with the clones does make it difficult for Viper to find an ultimate angle. That is one of the main reasons we do see Sivir picked into the Varus generally.
Nhịp độ trận đấu này vẫn đang là khá chậm, để xem nào có cái mã running không. Đi cái xỉu running được ấy. Đầu game kéo tay thì thôi, lại về xỉu Q ấy. Đánh thuần chậm luôn.
BLG are going to be behind on the neutral objective front to start this game off.
Gonna make it difficult if AL continues to stack up those objectives, but by then we have plenty of time to go. Landra may, I believe, yes, okay, with the rec site they have fished.
Ok, ở đây thì sao đây? Sun đang ăn lén cho mình cái con sâu này. Vậy là trao đổi mục tiêu. AL thì có rồng, còn bên phía BLG Gaming thì có sâu.
Or honestly neither by the looks of it.
Yeah, it feels like, you know, Tarzan, a player that always is able to make his presence known on the Rift, and we haven't seen him go for any ganks of any sort, but the way that he's been clearing, the way he's been positioned in the right places at the right time, still feels like he's had a very high impact to this game.
So far, it's been a lot of a pressure gauge that neither team has really wanted to let pop after it exploded at the 3-minute mark. Thing is, the Xin Zhao definitely does scale better as the game goes on, particularly having the Lulu in the pocket. When Xin Zhao gets an enchanter, the amount of sustain innate to his kit can really go crazy in these team fights, and it might prove deceptive when AL go in and try and burst out a single target, which is what the Pantheon wants to do. He wants to press W on someone, have the rest of his team use their CC or wombo combo damage to blow them up, and then reset, play another slow engage, and look for another play, as he is diving first play.
Wow, right on to Bin. Underneath the tier 1 turret, Flandra does land the knock-up, but it is followed by the public execution of Bin. Void Rush comes through. Bin not going to flash away for the damage, but does make sure Flandra goes down to the final turret shot. It's a confirmed 1-for-1 as Tarzan does kill him with the Comet Spear, but now he's going to come up with the Realm Worm and make sure that none of the wave is lost.
Oh, hold on, he's ghosting aggressively. Tarzan may have to flash out here.
Be okay for now. He uses the Aegis to get away from a lot of that damage from the overload, but does have to flash away. So all things considered, a 1-for-1, plus a couple of summoner spells and ultimates being blown across the board.
Very close stuff right there. Even if that dive had been slightly better executed, this is the main problem. You're about to see it. He's been getting to buffer this ultimate. He walked away from where he was expecting Tarzan to land, which gave him enough time to get away with this. And as we get to see, it was essential for Flandra eating that extra tower shot and going down. Knight was there, though, to pick up, and I think him trading Ghost here for Pantheon Flash is very, very worth it. Lower cooldown on that summoner, and more likely than not, that Pantheon was looking to flash on the rise anyway.
Còn mẹ nó chứ, vừa vào cái xỉu Q lại đánh nhau rồi. Thế luôn đấy, đéo có duyên với cái LPL này một chút nào luôn.
Back away from that wave, not worth the extra 14 gold.
Damn, Minion got hands.
Exactly. So Kyle doing his best to try to make his presence known in the mid lane, as Knight and On have now resorted to farming out this wave, clearing it out, maybe trying to get a crystalline bracelet proc or two. But AL still in general holding on to the lead. A lot of that though going towards the bottom lane, where Hope has really been able to pick up a ton of plates, get a lot of CS, and also going to get that call completion soon. He's going to be pretty accelerated at this point in the game.
Is a bot laner to first have a full item? This Essence Reaver is basically saying, I get to infinite wave clear now, and you cannot do anything about it. So, hold on, still going for this.
Going in, Flandra forced to flash away. Bin with that Q3, able to finish off the kill. But Tarzan is here, and he has a decent chunk of damage in his own right. But Bin follows up with the public execution. That eclipse with a lot of survivability. And in goes Shun with the flash, and the wind becomes lightning. 3 talent strike, and the kill. That's 2 for nothing in favor of BLG.
I think the AL simply weren't ready for that kind of play. I'm pretty sure Tarzan didn't have stun going into it, had just used it on his Krogs, I suppose. It didn't look like Bin got stunned at any point there. So, yeah, going to be very happy feeding some gold into the main man in the top lane and continuing the trend so far. It's not 15 minutes yet, but BLG solo lane is having a lead in this matchup thus far.
Thought process was right here for Tarzan. You know, hover Flandra, but just wasn't ready for Shun to come in quick enough.
So does he actually get a stun here? It didn't look like he was stunned under tower. No, okay. I was about to say, surely if he's stunned under tower, then Bin takes some amount of damage, but just not enough. And clean execution. Nice flash from Shun to make sure he gets in there. Even an extra second or so would have given Tarzan time to close off his E and pop Bin with the last Q. Nice little comeback.
With that, it is a top side very far ahead for BLG. Remember what we said in the pre-show here? Colin, it's kind of all coming back around. Solo laners for BLG able to put themselves into good positions. A lot of that, though, with the help of Shun, who has really been a catalyst in terms of playmaking here for Billy Gaming with his return to the lineup. On the bot side, though, it is Hope and Kyle.
4-2 dành cho Billy Gaming. Con rồng thứ hai của bản đồ đang được Billy Gaming kiểm soát. KL cũng như là Hope đang muốn di chuyển ra và quyết định là bỏ đến từ bên phía Billy Gaming. Một con Ambessa 31 của Bin thật sự là rất khỏe. Hơn một K2 vàng so với Rek'Sai phía bên kia. So that should, in theory, make him pretty much on the edge there. Once that empowered recall will help with being able to rotate the fights off of basing. Now he's just posturing around Dragon.
And right now, Shun on the top side of the map, so will not be in a position to contest. It looks like the goal will be to play a pseudo-split map situation. Have the bottom side really be dominated by AL, top side dominated by BLG. That's where the goal is allocated, and that is where players will be spending a lot of their time. A 2-0 Dragon lead for AL certainly will be helpful in terms of scaling towards that late game, but we'll see if that comes to the cost of Flandra's life, who is in significant danger here. Down to about 500 HP, of course, going to be able to get some healing back in that burrowed form, but Shun is chasing him down. Nice dodge from Flandra. That's the little stuff here that makes him one of the best top laners in the world.
Well aware after the previous play that he can avoid this as long as he dodges away from that essential ability, and will be able to TP back up top. Has the unleashed TP at this point, is going to be safe up there. Tarzan pressuring bot lane, but Knight's quite tanky.
Look at the damage Knight's able to provide underneath the turret. Kyle with the pop blossom. This Knight flashes away from it to make sure he does not get stunned up, but Bin comes in with the TP of his own, has the public execution, and will use it onto Shanks. Gets hit by the Rune Prison, but the Petrifying Gaze in response is going to be enough for the Ambassador to drop. So it's a 1-for-1 in this fight on the bottom side, and Hope hasn't even arrived yet. Chain of Corruption goes wide, but now Bin looking and hunting for potential stun. Not going to find it, as it will just be BLG backing away with that 1-for-1, but the first tower also going in favor of Flandra.
We'll put a bit of a dent into that gold lead in the top side, and I have no idea how Shanks was able to get that Petrifying Gaze off onto Bin, considering he was midway through a spin animation. So that was kind of crazy. If that doesn't land, then I think that Bin is able to sustain up through it, as this is just too aggressively posturing for AL. This isn't what we want to see. Shanks not able to walk through the tower range. If he were to take aggro here, he'd be in a bit of a rough spot. And Knight is just so damn tanky. On actually backs off instead of taking the Realm Walk, seeing that the Nico is about to drop down on them when they land. Bin does not get the initial pick, but with this chase down, I think the stun also came in a bit preemptive for Tarzan, because Bin was still in the middle of the public execution animation. And while it does result in a 1-for-1, you have your Sivir having to burn ultimate just to evac your support out of the play.
Now Shanks, without any flash or ultimate, is going to be in trouble once again, as Shun has arrived to the bottom lane to take him down. That is Shanks' third death of the game. He has been targeted heavily by the hands of BLG. And he'll be down for the next 30 seconds, but Tarzan looking to make a play of his own. Uses the Grand Starfall to get inner access into that mid lane tier 1 turret. Potentially try to cut Viper off if he goes a greedy route. Gonna get spotted out by that Scrying Orb, but it might not even matter, as he is forced to cleanse. Does use the Hail of Arrows to try and slow Tarzan down. And now the Chain of Corruption has come in. Bin has come back from base, and BLG are looking to party once again, and AL are not in the right position. Viper gets payback onto Tarzan, and they'll lose yet another man.
Long-time former teammates, Viper comes out on top in that one. Just barely playing on the edge. Does have to burn his summoners though, makes this Varus a target in future fights. But we need to see AL force something. They may have the dragon lead, but if BLG play this correctly, I think the game is quite in their hands. If you go to the objective first and then make AL walk into you, BLG should be in a favorable position. That's what we're talking about where it came to how these comps execute. They have less tools for going forward, but much better tools for having you run into them.
We're going to see in this game what Hope is made of down in the bottom lane for AL. He is one of the more consistently tenured, one of the longer tenured players here for the team. Him, Shanks, and Kyle were a part of this squad back even in 2024 before Flandra and Tarzan joined in the party. But Hope, has had a bit of an up and down career, really on the up and up recently. But with the lead over one of the better AD carries that we have in the league in Viper, gonna have to be the main damage dealer in this game that is relatively still, even. If AL want to have a chance of pulling away with it.
I mean, Knight is about to pop over to have the Seraphs and the Rod of Ages in pocket. Shanks not that close to it right now. Does actually have the pen shoes rather than going for the MR shoes himself. Does mean that Knight will take a lot longer to die when Shanks is hitting him versus the other way around. But if Shanks is allowed the free hit, he should tear through BLG. He's just not been given such an opportunity, constantly getting jumped on by Shun, by Bin in this side lane whenever he goes too far up. And you can see he is being reticent to push up right now. Even though he's the one with a global ultimate jungler, if he shows himself and doesn't have backup, Jun's already here to force something bot lane.
He's here to protect Knight, just like he did in 2024 on that run to the World's Championship Finals. Of course, with that time apart, Knight was like, hey, get this guy back in here. And so far, it has worked out in a pretty good way, specifically for the mid laner for BLG. As the third dragon has spawned, it'll be a Chemtech Drake, Chemtech Soul potentially on the table if AL are able to pick up 2 more. And if BLG are able to pick up 4, it'll be anyone's legend starting this one up right now. But it looks like they're just playing it as a bait, make sure that the full positioning is made aware by BLG. Still Flandra pushing on the top side with Bin instead opting to join the rest of his team at least for a moment. Shun playing very aggressively and forces a rocket belt away from Kyle. That is a big engage tool that will no longer be available as BLG regain their control around the bottom river.
This is meant to be the moments when AL comes out on top. Fighting around objectives is where they made their bread and butter in the league. And now with Rifthold being shut down, they are going to regroup as 4 and look to try and defend this mid lane tier 1. A very important objective for keeping map control, particularly with how essential dragons are going to be to a win con for both teams.
Kyle using the clone to face check that brush where a lot of BLG members were in, and Tarzan opting to go forward is going to just get met here by Shun, who now has a wild growth on top of him.
Rồi, xin giáo của Sun lùa hết nhưng mà bị đốt chết không? Không đốt chết nhưng mà là cái giáo sao băng của Tắc Răng dứt điểm được Sun. Chơi sập đến. Đội hình của Billy Gaming cần phải chạy. Tắc Răng dấn hơi sâu rồi. Viper có được cái mạng Tắc Răng. Phía bên này Bin đến. Bin có được cái mạng của Hope. Con Gna này vẫn đang múa, bị hóa cóc. À không, đây là một con Rek'Sai, sorry anh em. Bin vẫn đang múa, Vlandre đào hầm. Rút lui được khi có cái trụ chống lưng. Một cái 5 vàng chênh lệch.
Both junglers respawning. I feel like we're going to get this salty run back very, very quickly as the map starts to repopulate. And we get to see this one kicks off by Tarzan, the guy who pulls the trigger, going in, jumps onto Knight. But look at this, as soon as the Zin's ult comes down, everybody dives in from AL to try and DPS, but the Lulu ult completely stifles that engage. And Shun with a really nice sidestep to not get stunned up. Tarzan collects him on the end, but as we get to see here, it's been rotating down, causing the problem. Flandra TP's in, and it should be all but curtains for AL if it weren't for Bin causing such disruption on the backline. The dive partners for Tarzan are stopped, and BLG are able to walk away with the win.
So overall a 3 for 2, as Kyle was able to die, respawn, and make it back to the pit. But it still means that BLG were able to retake the gold lead, also add a dragon to their arsenal. make sure that there is no soul point available for anyone's legend the rest of the way. But you can see what our JD bot thinks down at the bottom of your screen. Still a very closely contested game that could go either way. As AO showed that they still have a little bit left to fight with. Hope still very much in a strong position, nearly finishing off that Infinity Edge. But it felt like there here, Melvin. The engage from Tarzan, very telegraphed, and it felt like BLG were very ready for it.
That's one of the things about playing this Pantheon is unless you're getting the Grand Starfall in a position where you're not posturing for an objective, it's quite difficult to force something that the enemy team isn't ready for. That's why I want to see Hope being the guy that pulls the trigger with Tarzan to force something 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 40 seconds even, before the objective, as opposed to waiting until it's already alive. AL, they will do better if they can stand in front of the dragon, in front of the Baron, and hit it and make BLG run at them. But they kind of were getting drawn between, we need to keep Flandre top to keep Bin up top lane, because if Bin's down here, then that's their main engage tool. So AL was kind of just posturing as 4 people, not wanting to pull the trigger, and by the time they did, they were able to trade 1-for-1, but it wasn't able to convert into anything meaningful. As now, we have a red buff fight with Tarzan being looked at quite aggressively. Not going to be resulting in anything, but it is losing prio for AL around this Baron pit with the top lane tower going down.
Yeah, at this point in the game, the fact that Knight able to clear out any wave that he chooses right now that is around the top side. And now Relmorph is coming in underneath the tier 1 turret. Could be in danger. Are anyone's legend? Kyle does not hit anybody with that Pop Blossom, and he's already down. And so is Flandre, with Bin landing a beautiful public execution. So it's the tower plus 2 more in favor of Billy Gaming, as they have had all of the right answers in this mid game.
Oh, AL want to counterattack by knocking Billy down here. If they are able to kill him, it would let them go and contest the objective, but no. Bin does have TP. Yeah, like he's ahead of you now. You can't do anything here, AL. You can't play for this.
The 5v3 Hope does not have the Infinity Edge yet. That is a major power spike that has not been unlocked. Bin just trying to soak up as much pressure as he can to allow his team to wear purple for the next 3 minutes, and they land a Rune Prism onto Shanks as well. Kyle has returned from the Death Realm. Shanks does not hit anybody with that petrifying gaze, so it will be everybody on the retreat from anyone's legend, and BLG now having the Baron power play.
Okay, with Knight having to ghost and Bin using both summoners, the best thing AL can hope for is setting up a play to kill these solo laners. It has been 1-3-1ing that has gotten BLG this lead, and they are playing so well around the map. This is what took the series. The first time they played in Game 3 was BLG just being smarter on the map. Knight, really nice flash away to avoid getting picked off there, as they do just get the 2, chain it into Baron. Bin waste time / gets chased, you can call it either way, but the end result is the same. We have 1 minute until the Chemtech Dragon is alive. If AL can get this and secure themselves a soul point, they still have breath in this.
Baron đã có dành cho Billy Gaming. Đầu đó là 4 cá vàng chênh lệch rồi. Con rồng thứ 4 của bản đồ 1 phút nữa sẽ xuất hiện. Để xem Billy Gaming tận dụng được con Baron này không đây. Đội hình của Billy Gaming cần endgame sớm nhá. Nếu không về lết con CV hay là con rắn của AL thật sự là rất khỏe. Đang muốn bắt vào Knight, làm choáng được Knight. Nhưng mà Knight có cái vòng xoáy không gian, rút lui được về thành công. Bên này thì on đến. Sun, phong lôi thương, bán nguyên thương, Flash lên. Kết hợp thêm cả khổng lồ hóa có mạng của KL. Sun vẫn đang rất trâu, Sun đang cân hết, Sun double kill, Sun triple kill. Nhưng mà Sun cuối cùng cũng đã nằm. Bên này Flan Razer mới dịch chuyển xuống hơi muộn, cần phải chạy mà thôi. Một pha càn quét của Xin Giao. Chắc chắn lại có cái trụ dành cho Billy Gaming thôi. Giật về ăn luôn cho mình con rồng. Một con Baron 2000 Power Play, không phải là quá nhiều. Đây anh em cùng xem lại cái pha can quét của Sun. Một con Xin Giao thật sự là rất khỏe với cái bán nguyên thương của mình.
option until this point. And when your Cassiopeia can't DPS, how do you expect to get through a Lulu-empowered Xin Zhao?
Man, it feels so good to be Xin Zhao in these games. You're already fed, you got a Lulu buffing you up, increasing your attack speed, increasing your health, making sure you do not die. And that is exactly the feeling that Shun has pulsing through his veins at the 28-minute mark of this first game. BLG, off of a nice set of sequences here in the mid-game, have ballooned the gold lead to over 5,500 and have left AL in a very, very bad spot. Baron no longer available for them. That is spawning soon, so should be the next couple of minutes where not much will be happening unless some major positioning issues are going to be had. And on that note, gotta call out Kyle a little bit. Getting caught out by Shun there. You are the main engaged tool, and he died without burning the ultimate or his flash.
It's one of those situations where you're kind of in desperation mode for AL, and if somebody's gonna pull the trigger, you would have previously thought it to be Tarzan, but we need Kyle to be there with him. We need to see this Nico ult going on to at least 2 people. But the Xin Zhao, Shun has been so oppressive in these team fights, muting several of Kyle's engages, not giving the potential for the 5-man Pop Blossom to save the game, as now it will just be a slow posturing around the Baron. Playing careful. Nice celebration for Knight there. 13th total. 5,000 assists. That's quite a big number.
Yeah, it just shows the tenure of this player. Remember, he was kind of the new guy in 2020, 2019 when he was on this upstart top esports team that made it all the way to Worlds. And take a look at where he's at now. 5,000 total assists. I mean, we're on milestone watch right now as well. I believe Bin is currently 14 kills away from 2,000. It could happen here in this series if things continue to go the right way. We'll keep our eyes on that. The graphic showed up on our Huya feed that we were able to relay that information to you guys. As just showcasing, right, the amount of star power that is on this BLG team.
Oh yeah, I mean, as far as super teams go, you can't say it's not. Simply put, you can't say it's not a super team when at least 3 of these players were considered top of role several times in the past few years. Arguably 4 going on 5, really, depending on how far back we are. Look, as they are now just trying to lead this game to a clean execution, not give AL a way back into the game. We have seen several times throughout the split, teams have not been able to finish out games because with the changes to this season, with the changes to tower plates, with the changes to how gold works, minion works, it's made it so much easier to throw a winning game state. If you make one mistake, there's a lot of standing gold around the map for you to pick up constantly. And the later we get on into this game, the less the gold lead matters, the less it becomes just about dragons, just about champion scaling. And while I would say BLG have favorable champion scaling individually, 3-item Cassiopeia, a near 4-item Sivir, still has the potential to run a team fight if you do play uncoordinated.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to have to be on what exactly BLG do to start a potential fight. It looks like that's going to be what they do around the Baron, although they are backing away from it right now. Shanks and Tarzan now in position to maybe look for a Swords counter engage, but he thought it was hard to kill Shun 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
He's got a GA now. You gotta kill him twice.
Yeah, that doesn't look so good, especially because Tarzan does not have his yet, so it means if he were to go in, yeah, okay, BLG's plenty away. If they can find Tarzan,
yeah,
they can take Baron for free.
You're playing Smash and you got an extra stock. You get to play a little bit more aggressive, make sure you're able to play it with your life a little bit more, and that's what Tarzan is going to force Shun to do. He has the wild growth on top of him now, but still in a pretty good position.
Sun bắn nguyên thương gì đây? Đội hình của AL cần phải chạy. Sun cái gì đây? Sun đánh gì đây? Sun đánh rất bướng. Bên này Viper đến, Viper có mạng tao tăng. Nhưng mà cái gì? Flandre cần phải chạy. Flandre flash qua bên kia. Chạy được. Đội hình Bin vẫn đang muốn đuổi. Vòng xoáy không gian được sử dụng. Sun có được cái mạng của xanh. Và đang muốn giật về ăn cho mình con Baron.
Question is, what do they get done at the same time? Knight looking to knock down this top lane tower as well with the dragon spawning. I mean, there's the potential for AL to go for some kind of counter-attack. You have Pantheon up with ult in 12 seconds, but where can you even find anything? It looks like it's just going to be forfeiting across the board, as this was such a weird start to the fight. AL go for a force onto Shun, and it looks good for a few moments with Kyle on.
Pha này KL nở hóa không được đẹp cho lắm, nhưng mà Sun bán ngân thương cũng vậy. Chưa kể pha này Sun flash lên để tìm hốp, nhưng mà không biết là mình đang bị làm chậm nó rất nhiều. Nhưng mà thật sự là con xin giao này sống rất trâu. Vậy là BLG Gaming vừa có Baron, vừa có rồng. Endgame được luôn chưa? 10k vàng trên lại 9k2 vàng trên like rồi. 9k1 vàng ở phút thứ 33. Nếu mà không endgame sớm thì để đội hình của AL với LED là hơi mệt nha.
Going to be invulnerable at this point. The Guardian Angel has been popped. Kyle looking for another engage and does find a two-man stun, but it will only be the Guardian Angel being popped off of Shun, and now Bin is straight into the backline, publicly executing anyone's legends right next to their own base. That is going to be another ace picked up as BLG
quét sạch dành cho BLG Gaming, và BLG Gaming sẽ có cho mình cái chiến thắng này. Vừa khít cái 29 xác.
Call themselves top one in the league. No talk about this top two stuff, as they will walk it down, get their first game in the series. But remember, they still need to close it out if they want to be going into that first spot heading into playoffs.
Ok, bú được cái xỉu.
It was close until it wasn't, and then BLG just said, "All right, time to win the game." They go up 1-0, and are now one game away from claiming that top spot in Group Ascend, getting themselves the best playoff positioning possible.
I'm curious who's going to be getting MVP for this game, if I'm honest, because I could see a lot of different lines. I could see a lot of different interpretations. I don't think we're going to get more than 5 people voting for the same person when it comes down to the official vote. Where's your head leaning after that?
Nghỉ ngơi đợi game 2 thôi anh em ơi. Tỷ lệ cao sẽ là 2-0 dành cho BLG Gaming.
On the Lulu, able to not do much in the laning phase after what was, not the best start, but the fact that he was able to keep somebody like Shun alive for so long. And, on the counter side, Kyle had a big responsibility in terms of forcing the engage, and I feel like a lot of that was stopped by the Lulu. Forcing polymorphs out, using things like that wild growth. You could also give it to Bin on the Mbessa. I thought he had a good game. Really, everybody on BLG was able to step up, and I think that is why they ended up taking the win. As you mentioned, I think you can go a lot of different ways here.
I think it probably won't be Viper just because he was relatively quiet throughout the game. He wasn't needed to be anything significant, but Knight, we saw so many good Rise ultimates, making just AL kind of struggle to be able to execute on these fights. They had tools to force, they didn't have enough tools to force, evidently, and maybe it's going to be just coming back to the drawing board and figuring out, is this the kind of style we want to play, or do we want more pick potentially in the comp? Maybe look towards something like that. Ashe Seraphine in the bottom lane, early prio that Bard for Kyle, give something else, because AL's strategy of getting a winning bot lane was working. They were ahead. Perhaps it was because of On's something at level 2. I think in retrospect, probably the only reason I wouldn't give the MVP to On is because the only reason that game was close was him just walking it down bot level 2.
I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, I blocked that from memory until I started thinking about who would be MVP.
Tried my best to forget the first 3 minutes of that game. To me, this was only a 30-minute contest.
Yeah, but I think that as far as looking at how AL went to play about that game, they just weren't able to push their lead early. We needed to see more of that early forcing while Kyle had the chance to go in. But Shun, I think he's probably, I've talked myself into it. I think Shun's going to be the main recipient of MVP, because every single time we saw Nico go in, there was about a 70% chance that you were just getting swatted away before there was any chance for a Pop Blossom. And there were so many of these fights once the lead was in BLG's favor that Shun just sat there and laughed at AL. They did not have the damage to deal with him.
Yeah, I mean, it was dominance through the top side here for BLG, which has been the story in this matchup specifically this season, right? when you take a look at how the early to mid game has played out, it's been bot lane for AL able to really, hold their own against Viper and On. But the solo laners, Shanks and Flandre, were struggling the last time these two teams faced off early in the season. And once again, we're not in the best position later in the season. Shanks, of course, getting caught out, dying to the hands of Shun multiple times. Flandre kind of failing on that dive early on onto Bin, and then getting countered, dove a little bit later on into the game.
Yeah.
Shows how that topside matchup went for anyone's Legend, and those two players specifically are going to have to step it up if they want to have any chance in this best of 3, and even more realistically, chance against BLG once we get to the postseason.
Absolutely. I mean, both of these teams are locked for top 2, but you still want to be going in top 1. The easier you can make your life going into playoffs to get yourself up there for that first stand qualification. It's so important because we see it time and time again over the years. The teams that go to the internationals get a power boost when they come back. They'll have a couple weeks of slump of being like overworked from having to do the international, but then when they come back, you can see the amount that they raise their gameplay because you've just had international competition. It's the best place to just intensive boot camp yourself up to high form. And listen, considering we know both of these teams are going to be in Ascend coming into the next split, I think we're probably going to be seeing this competition for top 2 consistently throughout the year.
I mean, it was so fun to watch these two teams face off anytime last season. Now we're going to get to do it all over again here for time being in the LPL. I love the idea of everybody playing everybody in theory, but in practice, when there's 14 teams, getting the best matchups is always a good thing, and that has been one of the joys of Group Ascend every time you tune in. You don't necessarily know who's going to win. I think they ran a graphic that every team has kind of beaten everybody in a sort of circle here in Group Ascend. And we're seeing it here, although it could be a 2-0 sweep in terms of series score if BLG are able to pick up one more Nexus over the next 2 games.
That's not what I want. I want them to... I don't care if they get the 3rd game, but I am manifesting. I'm praying that we get to that 3rd game, because this was fine, but it wasn't as exciting as that first time around. I want to see more life from AL in Game 2. I want to see Tarzan on something that when it forces, it goes in and the team goes with it. Get him back on the Sejuani, please. I want this man on Sejuani.
So your answer, you want to be more proactive, and then the answer is Sejuani.
Yes.
You know what? If that's going to be what helps unlock somebody like Flandre, somebody like Shanks, maybe combine it with a Silas or an Ekton, a Fiora, whatever it is, I'm for it. I'm all in on it. But you're gonna have to convince me as we get into game if that is gonna be the case, because putting one of your best players on the Sejuani, it's a little risky when you have seen the performances of his teammates at this point, putting so much faith into a guy, into those other pieces when Tarzan really has been one of the more consistent players all year long.
You're definitely not wrong. I mean, you could look for the potential line of seeing if you can get that Kiana locked in. Is something that, while I personally don't like generally, is iconic to the region and is something that gives you a lot of agency. Shun, on the Kiana, won the last series in that Game 3 with a 5-man Kiana ult, so that might be an angle for Tarzan. But I think that the bigger weakness here is that AL didn't have leads in the solo lanes again. The only time we have seen AL manage to beat BLG was when mid lane had a lead. It did come off of the back of Knight playing Azir, so can we find a matchup for Shanks where that can happen where Knight isn't hamstrung? Who knows?
Right. Maybe the real goal is to mind control Shanks and mind control Knight into picking the Azir. It looks like the player of the game is Shun. You were correct on that one. He did play very solid. A lot of the reason why the top side of the map was able to get going. So that's his first MVP of the 2026 season back on BLG.
Crazy. I mean, I suppose when you're next to Knight, it is kind of hard competition.
A lot of mouths to feed in that department,
yeah. Yeah. I'm glad he got the recognition, though. This was a really good game and made the difference consistently throughout it to keep BLG in the driver's seat. But it's not best of 1.
That is right.
Best of 1.
More League of Legends to be played as Billy Gaming get themselves just a little bit closer to that #1 overall seed heading into the Split 1 playoffs of the LPL season. But anyone's Legend still have a little bit of fight left in them. We'll see if they can come back, tie this series up, when we return from this short break on LPL English. battle between our top two teams in Group Ascend. It was Billy Gaming coming out on top in our first game of this best of three, the final best of three of the 2026 Split 1 LPL regular season. See if anyone's legend can bounce back, take BLG down, much like they did in Split 2 playoffs just a few months ago. My name is Graves, joined alongside Melvin once again. BLG looking like the super team that was promised here, Melvin, but AL have a lot of tools still left in their bag. They need to pull out some different ones than they had in game number 1.
Get this game a bit wacky, AL. That's what I want in the draft. I want to see something different. Because if we're playing standard League of Legends, BLG's looking pretty good at that right now. And that isn't to say AL isn't up there in the same competition, but we need to find something that combats these solo laners in lane. Because the fact that with the exception of one singular person in one game, out of the 4 games we've seen so far, BLG getting those lane leads in every other instance, it becomes too much after a point. And while Hope was rocketed off to a good start in the last game, it was not enough. Just not enough actionable gold that they can really throw at people. Using a Sivir as your main win condition, it's just not it in the Big 26.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as Shanks really fell behind and it fully rested on the shoulders of Hope to carry that game from a damage perspective, became much more challenging for anyone's legend to create situations for themselves where they'd be able to dish out enough damage against a Lulu-empowered Xin Zhao, a Bessa frontline, even a Ryze with the Rod of Ages and the Merc Tread boots. So all things considered, AL just didn't have enough juice in the tank, whether that is because of the individual performances or the champions that ended up getting picked. We'll see if the first selection situation ends up changing up at all. Of course, AL will once again have that priority. They picked first pick last time around. We'll see if that happens again, or if maybe they want to try to get a counter into the right hands. Maybe allow for Shanks to feel a little bit more comfortable. Allow for Flandre to get one of those signature counter picks that he has in his back pocket.
And I was honestly very interested with the fact that AL opted for taking first pick, because when we look at the previous series, BLG started off with the first selection and chose to have first pick in the game 1, and then after losing game 1 and game 2 again. But in game 3, where AL got their choice, they decided they wanted last pick. So opting to go for first pick today clearly shows they had a plan with the Nico, but was not ready for how much chaos the Xin Zhao would throw into the mix, Shun really making the big difference. And so now, let's find out if they're going to change up the strategy, go back to what was working, or if they've just got something else. Because, I mean, when we look at the early champions that are still available, we're probably going to see Jace, Orianna, these kind of champions ban Rumble. I'd be very surprised if any of them are getting through. But then there's a couple more that could start to sink through. Maybe we do see that Jarvan, who has been kind of just up there as not the S tier of jungler, but like the A+ so far.
I know you mentioned, some of those powerful picks, but we are on this new patch 26.2. Do you feel like things like the Malphite, the Jace, the Lily even have been subdued in a way, or do you still feel like they're powerful enough picks to be selected early on in drafts?
I think at least in pro play, the Jace and the Malphite nerfs aren't enough to bring them back in line. But I think we're going to need to see some... More than likely, the way it works in pro play is teams let it through once, and then if it loses, other teams are more likely to keep laying it through, and then we kind of see from there. I think at the moment, some minor nerfs to Jace aren't going to be enough to make him seem not too scary, but Malphite was getting through somewhat often with things like the Mundo and the Silas being potential answers. I think his nerfs were a bit more impactful. Potentially... specifically, losing 10 seconds on the ultimate cooldown at level 11 and 20 at level 16. It's just something that means you can't slam it off cooldown as much, which as you get later into the game is something Malphite wants to be doing. We do see, though, both of those insta-jump on junglers banned away.
Seemed like having an easy go button for Shun was valuable in that last one.
Yeah.
The Audacious Charge, not very long range, but it seemed like it was long range enough, especially when you had that Lulu empowering it. So all those champions that you mentioned still kind of hitting the ban tables at this point as we head into this second game. AL with that first selection opting once again for first pick, with BLG then opting for blue side. So the exact same situation as game number 1.
Is changing nothing going to pay off? Let's find out, as Okay, you got a ban Azir here, surely. It's BLG. Come on.
Yeah, it's a kind of a preemptive Ziggs ban because they know that if that doesn't happen, that's what's going to be locked in first by Shanks.
Summoning circle,
Maybe
no
Knight
Knight
has a bit
Azir.
of Oh,
no Knight Azir.
There's the printed pick. I've heard mythic legends about
no Knight Azir. Game
printed,
3. This is what we want. If we see Azir banned, we have hope.
You know, you want to see my notes? It's it says here what four characters equals first pick and 5 characters equals
Smart man.
blue
Smart
side
man.
selection. I'm still learning that one.
Okay.
Looks like the Rumble was actually selected, so they're throwing the gauntlet. They're saying, "All right, BLG, you're not gonna lock in this year, and if you do, we're okay with it." And you might not be okay with this one.
I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with it, Knight. This is the one time you weren't able to beat Shanks into the dirt. We'll put it realistically. Okay. Okay.
There it is. So, this now means that Shanks feels like he has an answer to this one. What exactly that will be, left to be determined. Things like Akali have traditionally been answers. I don't feel like, you know, the Assassins are really what Shanks has been thriving on recently, but it is something that he has been able to whip out throughout the course of his career. And it's against Knights Azir, which again, is something that he is 1-3 on this season.
I mean, the thing is, last time Shanks was playing the Orianna, another very strong champion who can actually hold their own against the Azir. Now, with the Ziggs band, Syndra's the only champion that really jumps out to me as like a, oh yeah, you slam this into Azir. That's something, and my god, if that's not 2 melees in your solo lanes, please lock it in, because that is the most Sejuani angle I've ever seen.
I'm seeing through the matrix right now. I know exactly what you're seeing too. Shanks gonna lock this in. This is a champion that, specifically towards the start of 2025, he was playing a lot of. The Yone really reached a high level of popularity.
Do it.
And you know it goes well
Do it.
with heavy auto attackers in your solo lanes.
Do it. That's not it. That's not it. It's my birthday at the end of the month, Tarzan. Come on.
But you
it's
know
a bit
what?
early.
We could get
Để xem là cái game đấu thứ hai này thì Billy Gaming sẽ là 2-0 hay là AL gỡ gạc được một game danh dự cho bản thân mình đây. AL nó thắng 7-2 rồi nên chắc là nó cũng giữ sức thôi, nó cũng chả việc gì phải trái hát anh em ạ.
Sure, we're going for the other route. There was the one route of put Tarzan on full utility so he could give all the resources to the laners and hopefully sway that matchup out of BLG's favor. Going for this alternate route, this is saying, okay, fine. If Shun is going to have that much of an impact, why can't I? Picking something that does scale very well, it does now put a bit of an onus on BLG to get stuff done early. And when you have Azir, Yanara, Cassante, not exactly the tools to do so. We're going to need to see the second rotation tie up both of these drafts something nice. Things like the Rel, things like the Alistair really do need to be looked at with the amount of wombo potential on AL.
And you know what? There's a nice tool that anyone's legend have to deny some of that, and that is called the second ban phase, which we have now entered. See if any of On's champion pool does get targeted here. He does love his hard engagers, although he did play the Lulu in game number 1. Now, we get to see BLG take away some champions from Hope. Things like the Corki that could potentially work well into Viper's Yunara. Potentially give the superstar transfer ADC for BLG a little bit of a better time than he had in that first matchup.
I would love to see AL ban stuff like the Brom preemptively, considering the Misfortune is another champion that could slot really nicely into this AL comp and can threaten the Azir from super long range, so that's something to keep in mind. Outside of that, the Kai'Sa's the other natural pick. You've got full dive from AL right now. Does make it a bit more volatile, so let's see what kind of flavor... It is. Let's see what flavor BLG doesn't want to play against, though. I'd be really surprised if it's anything other than those two being banned away here. Okay. Interesting. All right. Sure. I mean, it gets a better lead against Yunara in the lane phase, so I think that's just trying to say, all right, not sure how this mid lane matchup's going to go. Top lane probably going to be Bin just absorbing the lane phase, unless we get some major impact from Tarzan early, which is unlikely on the Wukong. So now, getting some more power towards the bottom side.
I think Misfortune makes a lot of sense here. If that is something that Hope wants to end up selecting. Of course, we're going to have to wait until we get to the next ban phase here. Nautilus taken away from On. having that easy go button means that maybe something like the Kaisa would get picked up by Hope just to have, you know, deny the easy point and click CC. But time will tell as we wait for the selection here on the 4th pick for BLG.
Rakan is on the table. I mean, I'm very surprised, honestly, that we didn't see a Leona ban from AL if they were going to go towards the direction of that misfortune as, okay, very slow. This is one of the champions that did get impacted on the patch. Aatrox did get some buffs to his Q, which, clearing monsters, it snowballs quite a lot because that gets amplified each time he Qs. So, yeah, he's just a bit quicker, bit more, you know, speedy on the clear. The Aatrox is already fringe good in the jungle, but, you know, this game, he's got a lot of targets to be hitting, and if we're picking short-range ADC, probably a Rakan, Alistar, these kind of champions now, the Aatrox has the potential to kind of run away with the early game if he can get even slightly ahead.
I know it didn't work out well. I forget who exactly it was in that first time we saw it. Was it? It might have been Jinja or something like that. But Aatrox jungle definitely has had its power in other regions, and you want to counter to hard engage here, Melvin? You pick a Renata. The Aatrox is going to help out there as well. I think BLG have a good answer to what anyone's legend have, but AL with a much more solid and complete identity.
Yes, this one, last time you had the Cassiopeia running along with a Sivir, it's like those two kind of want to do different things. They could do both, but not well. This time, everybody goes in. Everybody goes in. The Alistar and the Wukong go in first. Maybe Yone if you're feeling spicy with it, Shanks. And then we see the Equalizer tumble down, and it just splits BLG up, makes the fight impossible, where Hope gets the free hit. BLG, with that Renata last pick, and with the Aatrox, have got good tools to handle it, and even the Azir and the Yanara are incredible, they just need a bit more time to get ready. So, with double range bot lane in the pocket for BLG, let's see how many of these lanes can go favorably for BLG as we head into what could be the last game of the regular season.
AL don't want that to happen, as they still feel like they are the best team in the league. That's why they kept all 5 of their players. That is why they're on this 6-match winning streak.
Ok, có đầy đủ đội hình của cả hai bên rồi. Game đấu thứ hai này à? Game đấu thứ hai này, game đấu trước thì BLG Gaming hấp diêm rồi. Ồ, game đấu thứ hai này AL cửa trên à? Thế thì dễ là có 3 game lắm này. AL Money Line, go go, let's go. Game 2 AL vs BLG Gaming. Lên thuyền anh em ơi.
Spice it up, go crazy, be aggressive. That is exactly what they did with this team composition.
The reason that AL looked so good throughout last year was they were just the best team in the world for so long at showing up to an objective and just outfighting you. That's what I want to see from them this game, because last game, BLG was doing it. BLG was showing up, and the thing that made BLG special, both in their prime and again now, is that they feel good about just constantly forcing plays and putting that pressure on you, making you have to perform constantly. This game, though, I don't think they have as many tools to force that. Like, when we look at how BLG force a play proactively, is Aatrox just going to run into 5 people? It has to be something that, I don't know, I think that while BLG have good tools into AL this game, they don't necessarily have good tools for BLG. So we'll have to see if they can really diversify the way they play the game and be at those objectives first, get Shun ahead, and make this difference against the AL squad, which I say is a lot more in flavor for what we want this team to be doing.
Yeah, because when you're playing a composition like what AL have, where you have the Kaisa Alistar, you have all these go buttons to just immediately send it straight down mid. It's a very snowbally composition. As soon as you get a little bit of a lead, it is very hard for your opponent to try to counteract that. And so for BLG, you got to make sure that you're ahead and at these objectives first, so that AL, with their desperate mindset, will go in straight into the trap, potentially, that you've set up with things like the Renata Glass, like an Aatrox, who is a very solid counter-engaged champion in his own right. And that's kind of the style that they're going to have to play. And as you say, starting with Shun on this Aatrox, being able to be just as strong as he was in game number 1 on the Xin Zhao.
100%, and this is the time to really kind of define if this champion's going to continue to have legs going into the playoffs proper. if Shun has a really gross game on the Aatrox, if he can stay ahead on the clear against the Wukong, who historically doesn't get a lot done pre-6 and really doesn't get a lot done pre-Triforce, there is a window for this Aatrox to sneak in there, impact lanes, blow those important summoners, and take the pressure off of his laners, particularly the solo laners. I think this bottom lane with the Renata into the Alistar, unless we see some heroics from Kael, should be pretty safe for BLG. But, you know, it's LPL. There's only so much positing we can do before things get thrown into the system, like potentially on walking up level 2 and deciding, actually, let's make this game interesting.
You can set up all of the expectations, make sure you have game plans for each team laid out, drawn, and clear, and then all of a sudden, 2 minutes into the game, all that can be thrown out the window. That's the beauty of League of Legends in general, but specifically in this league, crazy is our game really holding true as the motto of the LPL. And we saw it in that first game. We've seen it all season long. And when you get a matchup between the two best teams in the league at this point, you're no doubt going to get some of that chaos. And that's something that AL specifically are going to want to have to unlock with their composition today.
Absolutely. And now we're kind of going in circles at this point of just waiting to see when we're going to get to see the heroics come out. So I think let's, you know, try and slow it down. Not, you know, we're going to have to build it all back up once we get into game anyway. How have you been enjoying the split? Because this is my first one here, and it's felt really cool.
It's been great. I mean, a lot of competitive games back and forth. The fact that we have 3 groups means that every game really, really matters in terms of getting yourself into the play-in tournament if you're a team in Group Nirvana, getting yourself into the playoffs if you're in Group Ascend, getting yourself seeding advantages if you're in Perseverance. I don't know how much time we have into the pause, so I don't want to necessarily whip out the standings graphic just yet, but just across the board, the fact that we've had so many close matches, so many ties having to be broken, the fact that we have a tiebreaker tomorrow between WE and NIP for first place in Group Perseverance, that just shows how close it has been between these teams in the LPL and how blessed and how privileged we are going to be to get to watch the entirety of this 2026 season unfold.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we were preparing for this game and talking the other day, there was the chance that we were going to get a tiebreaker match for first. Again, there was the potential that we were going to get tiebreakers again in Group Perseverance and in Group Nirvana. It's like, this has been such a chaotic start to the year in a very good way. And you know what? At least for entertainment value, S tier. S tier.
Yeah. You know, it always comes back to the conversation. Has the LPL... you know, are they able to build up what it takes to contest with Korea, to make it back to the top of the world stage?
It's tough.
Not entirely sure yet, but I think with the way that we've seen these teams play, everybody seems to be able to beat everybody. You can call it a good thing or a bad thing, right? It's either everybody's so good and they're all going to come in and smash Korea no matter what, or they're all kind of not so good, and when they go up against the high-level competition internationally, maybe they will struggle. It seemed like it was a little bit more of column B in 2025, but when you bring in someone like Viper, when you bring in Junja and Honkyu over from CFO, you just elevate your region in terms of just the top players that are able to compete here. And I think that is a good thing for everybody in this league, not just necessarily the teams that were able to pick those superstars up.
100%. I think that JDG roster is going to make such a big difference to the LPL's just amount of prep you have to do. With such unique styles, if we can see some of the weaknesses that have kind of showed themselves in the second half of the split get shored up, I mean, we know that JDG can take games off of the top teams. They're currently 3-1 against the 2 teams playing right here, right now, that we have been positing as the best in the league, with good reason. So if we can see the weaknesses of JDG, that consistency start to close up, then particularly going into playoffs, once we get into best of 5s, very different environment for Fearless. Right now, you can get by with a champion pool of 2 to 4, but once we're in best of 5s, that's when it really starts to show, well, there's a reason that we call Knight pretty top tier over here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. It's going to continue to be fun. And speaking of what is to be expected as we wrap up our pre-Chinese New Year portion.
Anh em đợi chút nhá, đang pause. Đang check rate tí. Cười tươi thế, on cười tươi thế. Chắc nhận được tiền hay sao mà cười hớn hàn hở ạ.
Over these next few days before we head on, of course, that brief It is a kind of modified double elimination bracket. Teams at the top are going to get an extra game that is, you know, the WEs, the NIPs of the world. Round 2, these guys are all going to be kind of single elimination. There's a lot of really fun matches, though, that have already been set up for ourselves here.
Yeah, absolutely. We know now, based on the first series, that TES will be the team playing in that qualification match, and it will be Weibo going directly to playoffs. So at least that bit is locked in. But I'm really looking immediately at that round 2. I need to see EDG continue to step up, because this roster, I mean, especially after covering Demacia Cup, I was pretty high on their expectations early on, but we just haven't seen it. As now, finally, we get the real main show.
Đây rồi, đến với trận đấu này thôi. Chào mừng anh em đã đến với cái game đấu thứ 2 của cặp đấu cuối cùng ngày hôm nay giữa BLG Gaming và AL, hai thằng nhất và nhì bảng. Đấu hiện tại thằng nào thắng được, tầm này thắng thua không quan trọng, nên là nhưng mà em Hổ nghĩ là sẽ có cái ván đấu thứ 3 để có thể cống hiến cho khán giả đấy. Nên là trận này em Hổ đang có cho mình một cái AL trừ. Đội hình của AL cũng không phải là yếu.
Generalist recap, we don't need to go over everything again, but if AL are to turn their spirits around, we need to see some impact in these solo lanes. We need to see these solo laners getting ahead. And ideally, Tarzan, as soon as he hits that level 6 mark, as soon as he can, having some impact on the map, because last game just felt a bit too slow for AL.
And of course, eyes on the junglers here. Tarzan, of course, on the Wukong. Champion that, you know, he's able to do a ton on throughout his tenure here on this team. Whereas Shun on a new look jungler in the Aatrox that just got buffed in this recent patch. But as we mentioned, the way that BLG's composition functions, you're going to want to get some of your lanes ahead in order to be in a good position. And so Shun is going to be a big part of that here. BLG already unlocking that 2v2 push in the bottom lane like they did in game 1.
Absolutely. Leveraging the double ranged matchup is going to be essential for these two to get a lot done. As I believe Viper just used barrier because he accidentally ate a tower shot there. So that is going to be an important summoner down. Pretty sure AL should be able to notice that it was used. It kind of... He used it and then stayed at full HP because there was a Renata shield at the same time. So there's maybe a small angle where AL didn't notice the barrier go down. But we'll just have to see, because with this Alistar, as we've seen it so much throughout the year already, there's the potential to start something immediately if he wants to.
Yeah, get a little bit too close to the tower. That's a flash, pulverize, straight in the headbutt back into the tier 1, which is certain doom, especially in the first 3 levels of the game. Viper and On are going to have to be careful of that. They do have their jungler around the bottom side, potentially doing a little cross up and towards top lane, but looks like just a standard full clear into 1 crab apiece going to be happening here, as Viper does have to flash away from that headbutt pulv combo from Kyle. He has no idea at this point where Tarzan is.
And I think we're going to call that pretty big worth right now, assuming AL does not get dived, which, to be fair, there is a Renata in the game. So there is the potential if BLG do want to full send it down there, knowing there's no heal on the Alistar. But I think that just with how the Yanara is in this early game, good for game priority, not so good on the damage part for going for a dive. Shun is in the area though.
He's going to get spotted here by that ward in the Tribrush, so hoping Kyle know exactly what's going on. And Tarzan headed back to base, picked up a couple of items, and now is going to be here to potentially counter this dive. Hope flashed away for the Q1. The Q2 not going to find too much, and should now have to flash away. A full-on 3v3 has unlocked here in the bottom lane, but it was only the goal of Tarzan to prevent any of his players from going down, and so AL will end up unscathed.
I think that's going to look like a 2-for-2 summoner trade. Both of Hope's summoners are down now. And yes, okay, it was Shun using the flash and the heal from On that were burnt. So, even on the map, but losing the summoners from bot are going to make the lives of Hope and Kyle even more difficult. As Knight pressuring in this early game, that's what we like to see. He wants to turn around this reputation on the Azir anytime now.
Yeah, that's a good start to this one. And Shun now has an opportunity to go for this second spawn of the Raptors. Maybe a dive is possible if Knight is able to get a little bit more more poke down, as you see On also rotating up here, but Tarzan gonna spot him out in this mid lane brush and dash towards him. It looks like all will be forgotten as these sides will back away. Speaking of Knight's Azir, again, big elephant in the room. It has been one of his weaker champions. If you include the Demacia Cup, not actually lower than a 50% win rate. Not something that is familiar for somebody as successful in his career as Knight. Now 1-3 on it this season, entering his 5th game on it in 2026. So certainly something that he has struggled on recently, specifically here, Melvin, but just given the reputation, it's a little bit hard to believe.
It truly is. The fact that it's just been the thorn on his side professionally, I think if Knight played Azir, even to like middling tier compared to his otherwise stellar ability to pilot the rest of those champions we just saw there, then it wouldn't be a conversation. But the fact that, as we all know, Azir is the mainstay of pro play. Hold on.
Oh, Bin somehow gets that all out all the way over the wall, forces Flandra to flash away. Flandra also going with the Ignite for a little bit of extra lane pressure, and that was enough for Bin to not go for the continued play for a solo kill. So just a pressure, just a flash. BLG gonna hope that that results in some more good situations down the line.
I think losing the Ignite as well not only takes a lot of pressure that Flandra can put out as just an ultimate trade. This is very standard in Azir plus movement champion matchups. We did see the Echo get pulled out a few times earlier on into the split as an answer. It basically does the exact same thing of Azir shuffles, you go yourself back, and dust hands, job's done. Alright, we go next. It's probably one of the weird areas where melee champions generally have a better time against Azir than the ranged champions, because standard things like Orianna, like Ryze, they just get shuffled and typically die off the back of it. It's the immobile mage problem. As now, Shun, level 6, does have the lead here. I don't know if they will turn this into a fight, AL.
Yeah, even if Tarzan's able to steal the scrum, not going to be able to have that Cyclone at his disposal. He gets sent back in by the chains, but does not get knocked up. That means that it will be a good opportunity now for BLG to go for a steal on that Gromp and maybe even look for a play on the bottom side, as Hope and Kyle are desperately trying to push that wave out, make sure there is no threat of a dive anytime soon. Just steal the Gromp, maybe the blue buff also, as our mid laners are also getting into a bit of a tenuous position. Shanks the Soul Unbound, going to force Knight to flash away with that Q3.
Okay, and that takes away some of the pressure that stops Shun being able to really threaten this blue buff with that has much authority, knowing your mid laner can't come. He's still hitting it, has the level lead at the end of the day. Ooh. Okay.
Just gonna back out. No problem there. So BLG, hey, we talked about Shun trying to get his laners ahead. Looks like he's okay with getting himself ahead too. He's up 3 camps.
And I think the bigger part of that is getting Tarzan behind, because the longer it takes this Wukong to come online, the less impact he's going to have. It's a champion that really is only really a champion now after hitting level 6, and once he gets over to that Triforce, just gains so much value from those 2 spikes in particular. Now, Tarzan can contest a fight, but I think he's still going to get walked over by Shun. I think he's still going to get walked over in these fights. If he can get over to that Triforce without having too much more hassle, a couple camp down is not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not where you want to be.
I feel like Wukong is one of those champions that if you fall behind, you just do 0 damage, and it just feels very, very terrible. Obviously, there's enough pieces on AL's side in terms of DPS to make that not as much of an issue, but you still want to have a little bit of threat here. As speaking of threat, Kyle gonna actually flash to land a good headbutt into Knight and pull off an Uno reverse card. Tarzan goes in with a Cyclone, and that's first blood for anyone's legend. Thought that it was a good play for BLG, but AL do a great job turning it around on its head.
That was some 90 chess type of stuff. As now Bin walks down, they will be the grub start. Pretty safe for AL, as On is still not over to the level 6 part, which would have made this fightable. Skirmishing, ADC ults down.
Viper, very, very powerful here with that unleashed ability. So forcing Hope to back away is going to be that trade, as you mentioned. But AL after getting that kill.
Trên công đầu đã có đánh chỗ AL, và AL đang ăn cho mình 3 con sâu này. Trận này AL sẽ gỡ thôi anh em ạ.
get the 1-3-1 online for AL. The ability for their solo laners to collapse is going to be super, super important, and even just now for laning, as we get to see Shanks able to build himself a bit of extra gold.
Yeah, gonna happily take that HP for a trade, because guess what? He's headed back to base. He doesn't really care how much HP he has as long as it is not towards a fatal margin. So he will head back. I wonder if it's enough to pick up any more than just the recurve bow. No, just gonna be that. Went for the early Berserker Greaves as Mochiones do.
Yeah, makes sense. It's one of the better items to be upgraded by the mid lane quest once that starts to tick over. For now, he's just going to be standard issue fighting in the mid lane. The dragon is up and Kyle is without flash.
Check does land. Kyle not wanting to burn that Unbreakable Will, so instead popping the heal to just get a little bit of extra movement speed on out of there. First dragon still has not been taken, and all the ultis are starting to come back online. An opportunity for somebody to go for a fight. Shanks once again trading very heavily with Knight, getting himself in an advantageous position with this raid jumping back in.
Okay, does take a bit of a heavy trade at the end there, though. It's going to make it a bit more dicey should he want to go for another aggressive play on tonight. And with BLG posturing to start up this dragon, Tarzan on the other side of the map, Kyle walking back onto the map. This is just a forfeit, not going to go for anything. You got the grubs. It was a really delayed trade of objectives across the map. Tarzan hoping he can kind of remedy his situation right now by stealing some camps away, but you know, this Aatrox clears pretty quick. The Shun has been able to take away his minions in the jungle and make it so there's just nothing for Tarzan to collect on the other side.
That's always a sad walk into the enemy jungle, as you're just hoping that, okay, I'm going to make a play on the other side of the map. This is what all my coaches, all the analysts say I should do, and then there's just nothing there. Valuable usage of your time as you do gain some information, and see some ultimates once again traded. Fate Seal, just forcing a little bit of a dash away from Knight, able to get out of that one unscathed. And now Shun and Tarzan will once again be contesting here around this topside scuttles. Tarzan does have the ultimate available once again, and so does Shun as he pops the World Ender. In he goes, not going to land that Q2, and now going to be forced to back away. Tarzan with the first proc in the cyclone does a lot of damage. Shank dashes back over the wall, and Knight still awaiting to use the Emperor's Divide, finds it at a perfect moment to take Tarzan down, and that evens the kill score up for BLG.
And that's the thing, when Shanks went in last, he used the Fate Unbound, but does not actually get the Emperor's Divide. So, Knight able to leverage that in the little team fight we have in the river. Very nicely done from BLG to a full collapse, and I don't really know for why. If I'm honest, that was on and Kyle up there, but just a regular little scrap, as now Kyle forcing something on tonight.
Not able to get the distance necessary to find that pulverize on tonight, who has been able to play very safe despite all the resources that have been thrown to him, playing like one of the best mid laners in the LPL. And if you think that is the case as well, another reminder, all pro votes are available for the taking. You flash your phone up towards your screen, scan that QR code, and vote for who you think has been the best players across the league, as we'll unveil those towards the end of the season as we get closer to the playoffs. Around that 15-minute mark here, Melvin, Knight's not necessarily at that plus 322 mark as per usual, but he's able to kind of neutralize things despite all that has been thrown his way.
Tell you what, if he can finish off the split on an Azir win, then I think it is a pretty promising case. Knight already while the up and runners in the top of that all-pro vote. Hold on a minute now, we've got a bit more of a scrap happening in the mid lane, as he's really asserting himself with this Lich Bane completed, leveraging that first item power.
So just do a little bit of extra on-hit damage with the auto attacks, with the soldiers, with everything. It means that Shanks is actually taking the worst end of these trades. Now he has the lifesteal, as he's going towards that Blade of the Ruin King, which always will be able to help him sustain a little bit, but all in all, Knight suddenly able to fight back a little bit stronger than before.
And it's important to point out that...
Ooh, hold on. Sealed. So that's a fun interaction, and it seems like Knight's been able to utilize it pretty well so far.
Exactly, it just completely eats away pressure from Shanks. Now he's getting chased down.
Yeah, he's got Shunin on the way as well. You know, would have been nice to have the Emperor's Divide, although he might have been dead if he didn't use it earlier. So instead, just going to be Shanks backing away. Now potentially some skirmishing around this topside jungle. The Rift Herald's going to be up soon. Tarzan's not going to go for the full send, instead going to allow for Shun to to smite away
Oh my
this
God.
Scuttle Crab on the top side.
We have both ADCs over here too. Gonna have to see now, are both mid laners gonna immediately walk back? All of the quests except for Kael's are completed, so this could be the final lane distributions for the moment. I was also not going to be surprised if we saw Knight and Shanks immediately run back to this in preparation for the Rift Herald fight, but it looks like no. It is just going to be both teams staggering their resets, getting ready to try and set up vision around that objective. As now, Ale pushing in, trying to get some vision onto the enemy bot side jungle. Maybe spot out Shin while he's taking a camp and get a sneaky window to start the Herald up themselves. God, that
Shun had a very
skin
strong
isn't
point in
sufferable.
this game as well. He's got this under sky, so thought the healing already with the passive, add a little bit more of that. It's going to be a very powerful champion at this stage in the game. See if it's going to be around the dragon or the herald. But BLG feeling pretty comfortable with where things are at right now.
Definitely a moment of peace, especially considering Flandra has not been able to pick up the full Liandry's. Hold on.
Right, dashing in. I don't think he meant to do that. Has to now use that Emperor's Divide. Kind of lost track of his soldiers there.
He was definitely in a weird situation. Everything about that just kind of felt a bit uncanny watching the play. I wasn't really sure what was going on, if I'm completely honest with you. Like, it was a weird standoff where both mid supports would kind of look at each other, and Knight was the first one to blink.
And now, without having to use that Fate Seal, Shanks can go in and pick up a solo kill on tonight.
First one to blink, and his eyes are sealed shut with the dragon spawned and the Rift Herald up as well. Looks like BLG are currently opting into just trading objectives, but Shanks can solo this bad boy. You can have 4 members of AL contest, and BLG are aware of it.
Lands onto On. A little bit of a summoner spell trade back and forth in the mid lane. Hope and Viper both just doing a little bit of peppering onto their oppositions. The Rift Herald still has not been taken, but the dragon will eventually fall. Shanks ends up last hitting it, evens up that count at 1. Could come at the cost of this tier 1 turret, but I think overall anyone's legend generally in a good spot, as Bin is able to clear this wave out and allow for Shun to make his way towards this Herald on the top side.
I don't know if Shanks is tracking where Bin is, but can potentially cancel a TP.
AL đang đứng trên tầm nhìn, nhưng mà bên này xanh rồi, xanh hủy được Bin biến về. Sứ giả đã có dành cho BLG Gaming. Hơn mạng dành cho AL nhưng mà ngang tiền. Bên này thì sao đây? Bắt đầu bắt vào On chết chạy. Ập trận điên loạn là đẹp đấy, nhưng mà Hope vẫn có được cái double kill. Bên này Cờ9 đang bị bắt. Cờ9 combo qua, nhưng mà mạng dành cho Tặc Răng. Phía bên này Bin đang bị Hope đuổi. Một mình Bin với Viper chạy thôi, và đó là 3 mạng dành cho AL. Mặc dù có được cho mình còn sứ giả, nhưng mà phải để lại rất nhiều mạng đến từ bên phía BLG Gaming. Nhờ 3 mạng có được nên là AL đang dẫn trước đâu đó là 2k vàng, và có thể sẽ tăng thêm khi mà những cái trụ chuẩn bị phải sập rồi. Pha này không hiểu sao là thằng Tặc Răng nó đứng trên tầm nhìn của BLG Gaming rồi. Pha này còn hơn người đấy. BLG Gaming còn hơn người nhá. Hơn hẳn đường trên luôn. Hơn hẳn vị trí của Bin luôn. Phía bên kia Flandre còn... nhầm, phía kia xanh còn không thèm dùng dịch chuyển. Mà AL vẫn có bát thắng. Bên này thì Bin bị Flandre xây rất sắt đau. Xanh cũng đến, KL cũng đến luôn. Quyết định là dùng cho mình cái chơi khô máu đến từ vị trí của Bin. Cố gắng gỡ gạc. Bên này Bin rồi, Bin bị xanh chém chết. Mạng thứ 2 của con John trong trận đấu này. Có lẽ sẽ là gỡ hòa được đến từ bên phía của AL mà thôi. Ngay từ đầu em Hổ đã thấy nghi rồi. Trận trước thì BLG Gaming chấp, tự dưng sang trận này AL trận trước đang là được cộng, giờ trận này sang trừ cái là đã thấy mùi rồi. Thả cho mình con sứ giả, Hope bản năng sát thủ đến, bắn rất đau vào mồm của On, đổi mục tiêu. On lên bảng đếm số. Bên này thì sứ giả húc đổ được cái trụ của AL, nhưng mà Sun thì chạy đi đâu? Sun lên sứ giả lái, nhưng mà con sứ giả làm sao lái được khi mà đã hết máu rồi, và Tặc Răng có được cái mạng của Sun. 30 giây nữa con Baron xuất hiện. Nào bên này thì xanh flash lên combo tốt. Có cái phân chia thiên hạ của Knai thả mưa tên lửa, hộp có được cái mạng của Knai. Knai nằm xuống 4 lần trong trận đấu này rồi. AL có được cho mình cái trụ đường giữa bên phía BLG Gaming. Tự dưng một pha tăng tốc của AL. BLG Gaming có vẻ là hơi ngộp. Con cái xa của hốp này khỏe lắm rồi. Bên phía này thì Sun cố gắng lên xe để lái, nhưng mà cái xe này hơi hết xăng. Xăng hơi ít. 5k3 vàng chênh lệch rồi. Đâu đó chỉ tầm 2 phút bật ga thôi là bên phía AL đang rất khỏe. Ban nãy phút thứ 18 con sứ giả vẫn đang là cân vàng đến từ hai bên. Giờ phút 20 cái AL hơn 5k. Nãy đang 1-2, giờ thành 1-9. Cái trừ của AL chắc đợi về thôi anh em ạ.
And now it is anyone's legend in a great spot here in this second game, proving that they are not going to just fall over and hand over this one seed. They want to hold on to that top spot in group ascent.
It may all come down to a potential single objective fight. Shanks is currently soloing Baron. That's happening. Man, Yone's a cool champion. Okay, he will get spotted out by the blue wall.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to kill it, but he was going to do quite a lot, considering.
It's called the limit test, right? They're far enough. I mean, I feel like I'll do it in I'll do that in like a solo queue game sometimes. Maybe not in like, you know, a potential series that decides my placement in a professional league playoffs. But you know what? They're feeling confident enough. That just shows you AL firing on all cylinders once again. And Shanks is at the heart of that, navigating his way against Knight. And in goes Tarzan again, landing another two-man cyclone onto Shun and on. They're surviving for a long time, but they have not had hope arrive yet. They go with the killer instinct, but Viper's able to shut him down. And they get a second one on a Tarzan. Here comes BLG, and they're here with a vengeance. 4 kills down, and it's Shanks now trying to fight the rest of the team. But it will not matter. It is BLG with a huge punish, and they're going to get the Baron at the 22-minute mark.
Everything looked so good for AL, and then on a moment it turns. The reinforcements arrive, and AL just weren't able to get enough done in time. As this looked like such a good play, but I mean, we talked about it. These two champions are really annoying to jump in, and the fact that you
trận này on không được chơi game luôn. Hộp bản năng sát thủ đến, hộp bắn hết.
Torn up in this fight between Viper and Knight going on him, and then it's just you outnumbered. Shanks got pinged back over the wall. He was nowhere
không.
to help DPS.
Thằng này AL đánh hơi rời rạc và lại cân vàng rồi, đang từ 5k vàng chênh lệch giờ lại cân.
Keep himself alive, and then as soon as you get one of those resets, the triumph, the extra heals, they just keep stacking and stacking and stacking, and this Aatrox goes from just a mere annoyance to an immortal amongst men, and that is exactly what he was in that specific team fight.
Definitely living the dark in fantasy this game so far for Shun. Doesn't need to be ahead on gold. He is definitely currently leading on impact after that one, even with Tarzan doing so much to generate the lead. You look up to the top of the scoreboard, and what lead is there to be had anymore?
Wow.
Just a single dragon? The gold is dead even, really.
I mean, the Baron power play helping that out as well. But it was 5K at some point. We were talking about Game 3 plans, and all of a sudden BLG say they don't want to have a Game 3. Still some more work to be done in order for that to happen, though, as Shanks still is a powerful Yone, although Bin now starting to soak up a little bit of that damage, and having the empowered minions certainly doesn't hurt.
Takes a bit longer to tear through, and the longer it takes, the worse it gets. Well, we get Viper's ability order. That's nice.
It's pretty standard. All right. Yeah. This is one of the things that made Yunara super powerful, though, right? The new addition of that Fiend Hunter Bolts. You get the extra crits. When you proc that ultimate, you ascend to even a higher level than you were able to previously.
It's a proper
Speaking of ascending, Knight might ascend up to another world as he is going to be in a whole lot of trouble. That interaction works well when you're in a 1v1, but maybe not a 1v4, as the killer instinct from Hope sends him straight into a big payout of 300 gold.
And that's what we need to see if AL want to get this to a Game 3, want to make this last match of the regular season go the full distance. It has to be more plays like this, using your long-range pick tools, using Shanks as the main go button for the team. Tarzan can do alright in a counter engage, but maybe Shanks here might have overstayed his welcome. Nope, not gonna fall into it.
It's a weird game. I kind of forgot. Really I kind of forgot that BLG were right back in the driver's seat, but that was a momentum swinging play. Stopping some of that aggression, it makes sure that the Baron power play actually doesn't end up being much of a power play at all. Plus 900, and the Baron gives you 15. So AL able to stabilize things, and now we're going to be able to take a step back, scale up a little bit more, and then fight for this soul point in about 2.5 minutes.
It's one of the biggest things about this season is it's so easy to throw a lead because there's so much gold available everywhere. If you stop putting your foot on the pedal, if you give a moment for your opposition to breathe, they can drag themselves right back into it. We saw BLG notice that window at the Baron fight and seize it.
Lại kéo tài tham rồi. Bên phía nào làm gì muốn bắt vào cơn ai. Hope bản năng sát thủ đến, Hope bị sun bật. Thôi Hope lại nằm, đánh rất ẩu đến từ Hope, nhưng mà đoạn mệnh là đẹp nha. Hợp chất điên loạn không đẹp cho lắm. Bên phía này thì xanh hết máu rồi. Viper đang ví, xanh và tặc đang chia đôi con đường. Flash qua bên kia nhưng mà chạy được không đây. Hope Viper vẫn đang muốn đuổi, không có hạt thông nổ thì chạy bằng trời. Bấm BV á, cơn ai đến rồi. Cơn ai này thì chạy bằng trời, mạng dành cho Viper. Đánh rất ẩu đến từ vị trí của Hope. Thế này trông giống rồi, trông giống là 2-0 dành cho BLG Gaming rồi.
Hope got into that situation, but again, just maybe pressing the ultimate at the wrong time. That is just the danger, though, of playing against BLG's composition here, Melvin. When you have a Renata ulti, a Nazir shuffle, even a knock-up from...
Đôi khi là thua luôn, đôi khi là chuẩn bị thua luôn này. KL đến nhưng mà làm gì? Con bò này thì làm được cái gì đây? Bị dính chơi khô máu, Flandre đến luôn, nhưng phía bên này Hope đang bị đánh rất đau. Rồi bắt được vào cơn ai có cho mình cái đồng hồ cát. Hết đồng hồ cát thì sẽ phải lên bảng đếm số mà thôi. Mạng dành cho Hope. Phía bên này Flandre đang sấy Bin rất đau. Tạc đang đến, đang muốn nhắm vào Bin. Bin Flash chạy đi. Tia truy kích đẹp, nhưng mà Hope có lẽ sẽ không dùng bản năng sát thủ đâu. Rút kinh nghiệm rồi. Viper Yunara 402 thật sự là quá xanh.
BLG can drag themselves back together with this dragon spawning in 6. Prio on the map for AL. If they can take this to a soul point, then suddenly it becomes a lot more pressure on the BLG team's shoulders. You have been pushing into the top.
Con rồng đất, con rồng thứ 3 của trận đấu đang được AL ăn. Chắc chắn sẽ có cho mình 3 rồng mà thôi. Trận đấu này là linh hồn rồng đất, linh hồn rồng đất thì cũng tương đối khỏe so với AL nha, nhưng mà không phải là quá khỏe. Nếu mà BLG Gaming có được linh hồn rồng đất thì là khỏe hơn. Mặc dù trận này cơn ai phế đấy, con Azir 165, nhưng mà Viper Yunara 402 đang gánh lại. Giành thoát xác.
Taking a look as we prepare for the Baron fight. Let's do a little run through of summoners, of important items that have been picked up in the meantime. Currently no GAs on the junglers. We do have a Seekers up there for Flandre. Zhonya's now for Knight in pocket. Both ADCs up into that 4-item territory. Pen item in the pocket for Hope, but not for Viper. Along with the fact that there is that anti-heal, does mean that Shun is a fair bit less durable if Hope is getting to hit him now. And then for supports, that Mikhail's finished for On. It could be the difference maker when it comes to getting out of one of Kyle's combos quicker. But really, that's the only thing for it to be used on.
Got my eyes on these bot laners here, Melvin. I mean, Viper, this newfound, not newfound, but the prodigal son of the LPL, the most fed member in the game at this point, going up against Hope, who has 4 items himself on a Kaisa pick that has dominated group ascend matches all across the board. Whoever has the better fights, whoever has the better positioning, could be the team to come out on top of this one. And a huge test for a player like Hope, going up against Viper and having an opportunity to outplay him, outmatch him, and force this game 3.
It's a Cold War scenario we sit at right now, standing in front of this Baron. Neither team wants to be the one to aggro it. Neither team wants to be the one to get their resistances shredded. Shanks looking to get some level of pressure down, but the fact that he hasn't got to hit this bot lane tier 2 once goes to show that Bin is really starting to turn into the brick wall. Approaching that level 20, already got the Randuins in pocket, mitigates a lot of that crit damage that Shanks is pumping out there. I think Shanks is still winning an elongated fight, but that doesn't matter if it's enough time for BLG to win the game on the other half of the map.
We've entered a lull. 30 minutes into the game. AL have stabilized the gold. It is now 400 in favor of Billy Gaming, who now again just need that one win to lock up first place in the group based off of just game differential alone. AL trying to get to 8-2, have the runaway best record in terms of series score. Make sure that BLG don't have the sweep on them throughout the regular season. I mean, that's something that can play into the mental of this as well here, Melvin. The fact that BLG could have AL's number, at least so far in this season. I wonder if that will continue to be the case around this fight.
Looking,
yeah, he goes in. Really nice flash, trying to lock down Shun, who still has not burned the ultimate. Shanks has to use the Fate Seal defensively, though, and that means that Billy Gaming could now go on the attack. Bin popping that control ward over the wall to get a little bit of a sense of where AL are currently situated. And with them now going back to base, potentially, it's going to be BLG starting up the Baron and canceling the recalls of AL. Likely to get a full 5v5 unless AL are content with just allowing this objective to go down. Tarzan has the Baron at 6,000 HP, has the Guardian Angel, but is afraid to go over the wall just yet. A teleport comes in with the spellbook from Kyle. They've kept the Baron at 5,000, waiting for anyone's legends to go in. Shanks goes with the Soul Unbound, but is now forced to tether back as Flandra has now overheated. In goes Knight. He goes for the shuffle, but everybody flashes away. And that is a big tool that is no longer at the BLG mid laner's disposal. He's burning down, and in goes
Hộp bắn ác quá, Hộp bắn chết được Viper rồi. Hộp vẫn đang bắn double kill dành cho Hộp. Triple kill không? Rồi. Triple kill. Thôi thì bỏ lại cái mạng của Sun. Đó là quét sạch và sẽ là endgame. Một pha combat 4-5. Chấp say. Endgame được không ta? Sẽ là endgame được mà thôi. On tận 20 giây nữa mới xuất hiện cơ, và Viper thì là 30 giây. Còn không cần đến Baron. Hộp bắn điên quá. Hộp một con Kaisa thật sự là rất điên. Ok anh em ơi. Và bú cái trừ của AL nhá.
This is what we wanted. This is it. All three going the distance between the best teams in the league in what was, I would say, one of the best games I've seen between these two teams so far. That was exactly as back and forth as I wanted it to be. And I think that may have given a bit of the momentum, a bit of the confidence advantage over to AL going into that third game.
Started from the draft, just the mind games that AL were able to play. They knew they had to spice things up. They threw BLG a bone. They said, we're not going to ban Azir. We're not even going to pick Azir in the first round. Do it. You won't. And BLG, they had too much of an ego seemingly. They know they have struggled on this pick all season long. They pick it up, and anyone's legends just had the perfect response to it. Shanks played that Yone game masterfully. He was able to find really advantageous trades for himself, allow for Tarzan to get in, and whichever jungler got off to the better start so far in this series, Melvin, has been able to close out the game and give their team the win.
I would say in AL's case, though, it was a bit less decisive. Particularly with that throw around the Baron, it really did look like BLG was just about to walk away with it for a good portion there. But it came back to AL team fighting around objectives, getting themselves to that soul point. And I think the fact that they had soul point put that extra level of pressure.
Đợi game 3 thôi anh em à, đợi game 3 thôi.
They have less than 2 minutes before the Mountain Dragon spawns. If we don't force Baron now, we're going to get stuck in the terrible position where they can just send Shanks to solo Dragon and stop us doing Baron. And if we go to Dragon, then they get Baron. And so it was a lose-lose situation. AL had got themselves into the winning position off the back of those objectives. And with a immaculately played final team fight, they were able to take it away after what looked like it should have been all over because they had lost 3 of their key engage ultimates before the fight even started.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the point of how these compositions like to function. We're going to get a replay of that last fight, but part of me is wondering if BLG just stayed on the Baron, forced AL to fully commit without having those tools, and then BLG go for the counter engage, would that have resulted in a better fight? Instead, you see Knight dashing in with basically a reckless Emperor's Divide, trying to shuffle everybody back in, ends up hitting nobody. And even though he survives for a little bit longer with a nicely timed Zhonya's at the end of that one, Hope is able to dash in with the Killer Instinct and just absolutely tear BLG to shreds. We said whichever bot laner had the better performance in the decisive fight would end up winning the game. And guess what? It was Hope. It was not Viper. It was the LPL mainstay that has stuck around here for the last few years, been across the league, whether it was, on JDG, down to WE, back onto AL. He stayed in the LPL, and he's now taking down the mercenary that is Viper.
Who, for the most part of that game, did look like he had the potential to run it for BLG, but was not able to take them over the line. I wouldn't say drag them over the line, though, because it definitely felt like everybody on BLG, short of the man in the mid lane, had their moments of incredible impact, where Shun did a lot to re-drag them out of that pit and put them back into the game with on around that first Baron play. But now, we have to start to project forward as we get the replays going through the history of what we just watched. And it does feel like history at this point, because even though this is only minutes ago, the only place we can look forward to is what on earth gets played in Game 3. Because right now, AL may be on the momentum, but they have only beaten BLG when Knight's been on his ear. Can they break that streak at this point? Because I don't see
Fearless strikes again, but in the opposite way.
Yeah, because we need to see them be able to win on something else. Shanks was able to get a winning matchup here, and I think that was the important part. Now, can we extrapolate that to the draft as a whole, or is it just we have a winning answer when it's against Azir?
That's a great point, because the Azir it's a meme. We can talk about it all you want, but again, as you say, the reason that it's worked out is because that is what Shanks has been able to get a good laning phase out of, and that is the main thing that has kept AL in shape. Obviously, they lost a couple of team fights here and there, but this one ended up being just a beautiful situation here. You got to shout out Kyle for that TP flank as well. I mean, you mentioned it at the top. Watching it again, he was a big reason as to how AL won that game.
If Viper gets the DPS Hope down there, I think he does win the isolated 1v1 with Knight coming out of Zhonya's and finishing off the kill. And then it becomes a very different situation. Losing that Yanara damage, I mean, there's just no damage threats at that point. Azir's dead, Yanara's dead. What is Cassante and Aatrox supposed to do? They're not that broken anymore.
Yeah, potentially. We'll wait to see as we finish off the rest of the season, obviously. But yeah, for now, this series delivering. That game definitely delivering. You saw the gold graph. That is an LPL gold graph if I've ever seen one. None of this one-sided nonsense. You're getting back and forth, comebacks, throws, all in the same. And that is exactly what you are to expect when we have our 2 top teams in Group Ascend. Potentially that finals preview, and if the finals are anything like this one here, Melvin, we are in for a treat to round out the season.
Yeah, I think this is a well-deserved MVP. I mean, recency bias because at the end of the game I was thinking Kyle, but at the end of the day, the reason that AL had the lead was Shanks in the mid lane, really sticking it to Knight throughout the game and being that pressure in the side lanes, in the team fights. Yeah, fair, deserved, definitely. And, can he do it twice in a row? That's going to be the main question, because if you can, then suddenly we have a very interesting playoffs to look forward to.
Yeah, AL don't want to get swept by BLG in terms of series score. They did not get swept in game score here tonight. They want to finish things off. They're not just going to be satisfied with that one win. BLG are going to get first selection in our final game of the 2026 Split 1 regular season when we come back from this short break on LPL English. one more game to determine first place in the LPL regular season. Who's going to have the top spot entering the playoffs and be in the best position entering a shot at first in? It's going to be either BLG or anyone's legend. It looked like BLG were going to come back in that second game and complete a sweep, but AL denied them. They won a clutch team fight at the very end of the game off the back of Hope on his Kaisa. Shanks had a great game on the Yone. Everybody for AL able to deliver in a clutch moment to send us to a game 3.
And of all the people who were not able to perform from BLG, the last one we were expecting, but it was Knight on his ear, not able to get it done. Can we get a return to form from BLG with him on a different champion? The blessing of Fearless for BLG.
Yeah, it means you're not going to be able to be put in a situation to lock that in again. It does create a very interesting mind game that you're going to be able to play with your opponents for the rest of the playoffs. Like, remember, it's a reminder that these stage games that we see from these teams are a mere fraction of the amount of practice and the time that these guys are playing the game. And I wonder if all of a sudden this is going to start to shake Knight's confidence a little bit, just about, playing the Azir is going to become a topic that people think about. Maybe he's dominating in scrims and just having some bad moments here. All to say, stuff to look forward to. But right now, got to focus in on the present, and that is the fact that AL have evened our series up. That Azir will not be on the table any longer, but certainly a lot of fun options available for what, again, is the final game of the regular season. We got tiebreaks tomorrow, but in terms of the initially scheduled matchups, this is it.
So I suppose we should kind of shopping list some of the champions we expect to see. We're talking about Knight, so why not keep it on that route? Things like the Syndra, the Talia, the Ziggs even potentially could come up here if we want to take it more into like the melee skirmishers. There's a Kali. Galio's a potential signature we could find out. And again, Ahri. All stuff that could come out here from the man in the mid lane. As we kind of expand that out to the rest of the game, what kind of champions are you hoping that we end up seeing, as now it is all or nothing, do or die moments for these players?
When I was going back and watching, just getting excited for a new player or a player to re-enter the league in Viper. Watched back some of the crazy LPL highlights he had, and a champion that's been very popular recently and was very popular back when he was on EDG winning Worlds was Aphelios. And he had some great games on that champion. Want him some finals, want him some World finals. Would love to see him whip it out. I know it's normally used as a bit of a counter matchup. The Yunara's not available and blah, blah, blah. But we'll see. I think it's definitely something that can fit the playstyle. Give Viper the ball. Again, it's been a situation where it's been a lot of other players being the main reasons why BLG is winning games. Viper has obviously been solid, but he has not been to that next level since he has joined BLG.
Absolutely. And the question is, will we need to see that from him this time around, or will the rest of the team be able to stand back up? We think about what carry champions are left in the top lane. A lot of the big picks have already been knocked down, but Bin Jax is on the table. That is something we do need to keep an eye on in this draft. It was played in the last game 3. These two teams played against each other to great effect. As far as the other ones that are really things we need to keep an eye on, the Kiana still could slip through right now. Rel is another important support that has yet to be picked, and in the last time they played, pulled out Shen support. So I'm expecting some flexibility, maybe something new. If we're lucky, and by we I mean me, Tarzan might pull out that Sejuani.
Yeah, we were going over into the break. It feels like the Yone was the best situation for that. Other pairings that are traditional.
Freljord comp, Anivia, Sejuani Ashe, they could do it. AL could do it.
That sounds great in TFT set 1. Doesn't sound great potentially on the
Can you tell the last time I played TFT?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, same here. They are all very playable champions, just maybe not in conjunction. I don't know. We'll see exactly what BLG what AL want to opt for here. It seemed like their strategy of just full sending it, going for fights, letting Tarzan engage basically at his own will, worked out for them in that last game. So we'll see if there are other tools available to allow that to happen again. I believe the Orianna has been banned away in both games so far. If you combine that with like a Nocturne, something like that, that maybe an easy go button for anyone's legend that is not the same as some of the other champions that they already have picked and will no longer be available because of Fearless.
Absolutely. I mean, other things that have been on the ban bench for all of the games we have had. the Jace and the Malphite. Those have been the champions that were banned over and over thus far. Things like the Poppy, maybe the Jarvan end up slipping through. That Ziggs was also banned away, but that was the bait thing from AL to make picking the Azir more appetizing for BLG. So I expect that's at least one more ban available for AL. It just depends now. I don't think we know quite yet which side of the map will have each of the teams on. It will be BLG getting the first selection. So drumroll, waiting to find out what they have opted for.
Not entirely sure. I think if, you know, if all serves well, the more preferred option has been to just take the first selection, allow for your opponent to go either side. But maybe AL maybe BLG are happier with getting a counter pick. We'll see exactly. I mean, I know Bin is a player that, and top lane right now is a role where if you get a good matchup, it can really mean the difference between winning and losing a game. Perhaps that is a situation that BLG would be happier with, and so we shall find out as we're, looks like, waiting on a bit of a pause to get back into the swing of things here.
That's all right. I think for BLG, I think taking away the counter pick would be even bigger just to deny it from AL, because when this team looks good against BLG, it's when they've got some kind of counter picks. Typically in the mid lane, that's the one we've highlighted, but at the end of the day, compositional counter picks matter just as much. ΔUN Renata was nearly enough to drag BLG back into the game last time around, but it just wasn't enough to get over the line this time, especially if things like the Bard available for support. That is something we could see either player lock towards. ΔUN's Blitzcrank also potentially on the table. There are a lot of things, even though we're in Game 3 of a Fearless, that could come out and completely swing the direction of the draft. It just entirely depends where the first few picks end up going. Which of those standard picks do we see get to sink in?
Time will, of course, tell. As once again, just as a reminder, that even though if BLG winning this game would put both teams at 7-3 in terms of match score, because of the way the game record is set out, BLG winning this game would put them ahead by just 1 in terms of the plus minus. Or actually, it might even if it tied them up, they would have swept AL anyway in the head-to-head. So, with that being said, it means that the winner of this will be the 1 seed entering the playoffs of split number 1. There's the typical go around here. BLG opting to pick first, AL going for blue side. We will not see that Orianna, as a lot of these popular picks once again being banned away.
Okay, now what is going to end up sinking through? The Talia is one that is, I'm going to keep talking about it until we see whether it comes out or not. The Akali priority goes down a bit with the Orianna banned away. We might even end up potentially seeing that Ahri slip through, as it will be a top lane ban, knocking that Sion out, making it a bit more difficult for AL to put together a standard front to back.
That makes sense to me. This feels like a game where Flandre would be very happy slamming something like the Sion. You have, of course, things already taken away that can do decently well into it, and it's just a pick that Flandre really has enjoyed throughout his tenure in the LPL when he was playing alongside Viper back on EDG when they went all the way to, of course, that World Championship title. But Bin's going to lock in the Aurora first. This is a flex pick, can go to either solo lane, but it could just be Knight getting something rather comfortable. Maybe a Victor is the response here for Shanks.
It's something. I don't know how I feel about picking a Victor this early on into the draft, but I mean, there is always the angle to send that up to Bin in the top lane if you want to get a counter pick on the Knight now, but we'll have to see what ends up going down. With an immobile mid laner picked up, the first thing I'm thinking about is, do we see a Vi lock in from Xun here? Because, yeah, anything you could do to punish an immobile mid is going to be very profitable. And also, there was a brief hover on the Ashe base cycling through everything. One of the picks that comes to mind is that Ashe Seraphine, something to keep an eye on, because with that, there is always the opportunity for a Sylas to come in. Not anymore with Shanks locking in the Victor.
Going to be able to deny that very easily in the laning phase. Bard has been banned against ΔUN.
Nice. Multiple
times, actually both games in that second phase. So they decided to pick support a little bit earlier this time around and get this player, one of his most favored champions. Going to go likely well alongside an Ezreal that can survive very well in an isolated lane while this Bard goes around, roams, and provides impact across the map.
does mean Viper will be taking a pretty humble backseat, though. So it does require the rest of the squad to be on picks that can drive the game forward. With Hope on that Corki, something that he really does prize playing, there is the potential to go for aggressive plays if left alone, and I don't mind which of these champions we end up picking here for AL, because I would say either give a lot of facilitation to get stuff done in the bottom lane. It will be the Nautilus, has the potential to manage those roams, and has something that can actually answer the Ezreal with that depth charge, being able to follow even through Arcane Shift.
Yeah, similar situation to like locking a Vi, but instead you just get the depth charge onto either the Ezreal or the Aurora, two champions already that are rather slippery and can now be locked down just a little bit easier as we enter the second phase of the draft. Anyone's Legend currently are looking for a top side of the map. BLG could be looking for a top side of the map, although they could of course also flex that Aurora up to the top side. Bans are going to start to come through, and Shun is going to be the target early on.
Makes sense. Ban out some of these physical damage champions. The Qiyana is one that I think both of these teams should really keep in mind at this point. There's not a lot of point-and-click CC. The Nautilus has point-and-click, but it's not fast, and Qiyana has a good shot of outrunning it and be able to do all her damage before she gets knocked up. So, something that I think both teams should be very mindful of as we get into the rest of these bans. The Mundo also something that could come in if either team wants a beefcake, because we do get Qiyana knocked out.
Thinking about stuff that could work well into anyone's Legends composition, specifically the Corki and the Victor. It feels like they have set up a very, clear-cut identity for themselves already, regardless of what top laner or jungler they lock in. They want to scale up, they want to team fight, they want to do big AoE damage in these big circles. I'm just curious, I'm very interested to see what kind of champions could try to counter that. It looks like stuff that can immediately dive into the backline is what AL's best guess is, and that's why they're banning away a ton of junglers here for Shun. That's 4 junglers out of their 5 bans.
I would really not be surprised if we see a Mundo ban here, because when you look, the Ezreal's not renowned for tearing through tanks, and we look at the rest of the squad, I mean, all these two need is a good frontliner for AL. Whether that be in the top lane or the jungle, looks like it's just going to be a Croc.
So giving last pick over to Tarzan in the jungle is going to allow for BLG to at least know where these soul laners are specifically going, and give a counter pick either to Bin or Knight, depending on where this Aurora ends up finishing. That and a jungler here for Shun that he's going to have to pick up line. Knight hovering the Galio, another champion that he has done exceptionally well on recently, and that is going to be the lock-in. He played it a little bit earlier on in this season, ended, I believe, 6-1 in 15, and provided some huge game-breaking plays to allow his team to win a decisive game. And this is a pocket pick, to say the least. You said that BLG needed a little bit more damage, potentially, to shred through tanks. That is exactly what this Kindred is able to provide.
That, you cannot pick Zed here into Kindred, surely, Tarzan. I know it is something that he historically has styled on like the best of them to ever do it, but, I mean, he did just get nerfed on this patch. I think it's a bit more stock standard, but the Lee Sin does at least have the ability of removing Kindred from her own ultimate. Gragas also on the table, but it looks like it will just be that Lee Sin pickup. Okay. Oh, it's just swapped to Sejuani. It's my birthday. The screen froze
you
just
got
as
your
they...
wish.
Hooray! I was just thinking it's a good Sejuani angle, and I was, I wasn't going to be disappointed with Tarzan on Lee Sin. But if AL really wants to treat me nice, I suppose they can. As so this gives Tarzan something.
Yeah, you get Tarzan Sejuani. We all get Knight Galio. We get Shun Kindred. I know Mazel is watching and is very excited about this.
Win.
After finishing off that first series. Just a great way to wrap up our regular season in a decisive game, again, to determine the #1 seed out of Group Ascend, getting yourself the best possible path to the first international of 2026. Do you like this Sejuani here? You think it works well?
I mean, if you want me to be completely honest, no. But if you want me to be completely honest,
that's not what you're supposed to say.
No, I know it's not what I'm supposed to say. But looking at, there was a reason I wasn't pushing the Sejuani agenda as this draft went on, because you kind of need to kill quickly. And the pick tools are nice individually, but you're against a Bard. Even if you land a Sejuani on somebody, the fact that Bard, who is probably building Mikhail's first item, can either cleanse them out of it and portal them away, or from across the map chuck down the ultimate to then send in the reinforcements with a Galio on top. I don't know. It's going to need to be a very, very scrappy game for AL to win, considering I think their champions just get a bit turbo outscaled. The victor will do a lot later, but can just die instantly, so...
One final game to wrap up the regular season, to wrap up Group Ascend, to figure out who will be seed number 1 and who will be seed number 2. And I love how, Melvin, we were going into this series. We were building up 2-star players. On AL, it was Tarzan. On BLG, it was Knight. These are 2 players that we think have very strong cases for even the MVP award at the end of split number 1, and both of them on facilitating champs in this decisive battle.
And you know what? I think that if you can get it done while on the facilitators, even more credit to you, because bringing that power and not just having to be the solo character and dragging it to your team is so important, considering you need to be ready for rosters, especially when we go international. Like, at the end of the day, we're looking towards first stand prospects for both of these teams. You need to be ready to play against the best of the best in every single role. If you cannot help facilitate your team, then it's going to really hamper.
That's true. I mean, these teams were designed not just to be revolving around a single superstar. In a way, that's kind of what BLG ended up becoming towards the back half of 2025. It was really the night show. At the end of the day, Bin was having slightly... Not his best year. Elk and On had some of their struggles in their own right. The jungle situation was what it was with BLG. And Knight really had to do a lot of that heavy lifting. But now, bringing in Chun, who he's very comfortable playing alongside Knight. You bring in Viper, one of the best ADCs or players on the free agency market. This is now their show. They're on the carries. They're on the backline AD threats. And they're going to have to tear through this massive front line that that AL have now constructed.
And so, just because of the way the ADC items scale, we need to have AL get off to an early lead. You cannot let this go to 4 items. 1 to 3, it's playable. But once it starts to get into the mega late game, this Kindred is going to tear through you. One of the big weaknesses when we're looking at this early part of the draft for BLG was, oh, Viper is on Ezreal. Ezreal does not tear through tanks. AL picks some tankier champions. Oh no. Shun, with a compositional counterpick on this Kindred, locks in and is very likely to be the main difference maker if BLG is to take this game away, as now we do have no marks, lost the coin flip on the first one, does not opt to stand there and wait to have the mark come over a bit of Kindred tech, instead is just wanting to maximize the farming, stay on par with Tarzan, who will be building very, very cheap items, so gotta stay on the board to keep up with him.
Yeah, we'll see if that build that you mentioned comes in, and one of the biggest synergies that Sejuani has in this game is with Flandra on the Renekton. They already forced a couple of flashes, and they're gonna get a stun out of him as well. Bin in severe danger, and danger turns to death. It's first blood for AL on the top side.
Super important. You can see a 20 CS lead already occurring just because of this range versus melee top. Flandra needs that help to get through the early, get to that level 6 mark, and be able to threaten onto the Aurora. As now, do have TP coming back in top, but Tarzan isn't up there anymore. Will be both flashes down. Should hopefully, for AL, make Bin a bit more reticent to play aggro. However, I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be constant aggression across the board. Speaking of, it'll be Knight forcing a flash, but in goes Kyle. So a lot of summoner spells being burned in the mid lane, but it results in nobody actually dying. And now Shun going to prompt an invade here onto the second spawn of the Raptors and force Kyle back away. Another hook does land, though, as On might have been caught a little bit out of position. He uses the magical journey to escape. A 3v3 around the mid lane. All but show at this point. Not a lot of full sends in this certain exchange. We've just crossed the 5-minute mark. Shun really wanting this camp.
Nào làm gì đây? Có siêu hùng dáng thế đến cờ nai. KL một bắn nữa rồi. Sun có được cái bạn KL. Sun vẫn đang muốn đuổi. Nhưng mà
kill count at 1.
Phải lui thôi khi mà có cái trụ của bên phía AL bọc lưng.
For super long, main beneficiary will be the mid jungle for BLG, but Viper was left alone for the majority of that. Had to take the recall. He's going to be able to calmly collect their farm now. Sheen in pocket. Hope opting for the Cull and Tia, going for a very scale-heavy route in the early game.
Really nicely done. Knight barely able to get to 6 to throw out that hero's entrance. And, you know, you might think about Knight and Galio, not really a Knight champion, a carry champion. It definitely wasn't at the start of his career. And we had that infamous 2024 World Championship Finals where Faker just styled all over him on this pick. And since then, it seems like Knight's learned. He's had a pretty good time on this one. We're going to see him have it again as he lands a stun onto Shanks, takes him down, and gives Shun his second kill of the game on the Kindred. So BLG getting this jungle snowball rolling, and it's coming off of the back of their star mid laner, playing on more the defensive side.
It sure as hell isn't a pick jungler in the way I was imagining, but you know what, when you pair it with a bard, it's doing great work to bring that attention, bring that pressure into the mid lane and shut down the immobile mage. This is the thing about locking in an immobile mage early into a draft, especially where it's that early on dying.
We're just praising him. That's a caster curse right there, Melvin, as Hope ends up getting taken, or getting a kill in the bottom lane in his own side. True Shot Barrage comes out, not going to be any kills there in response to Viper, as Bin is once again being the focus here. Tarzan clearing up on the top side. They're not going to get any kills here, though.
Okay, now we have the dragon being looked at from BLG. You do have a Kindred, so you tear through it reasonably quickly. Already at that tier 2 smite. Tarzan will be able to just continue to eat up these Kindred marks. Currently at 1 for sure. We've got to look at the 4 is the big marker. Once he gets that, it'll be an extra 75 attack range on the Kindred, and then further 25 range for each 3 marks.
2-2, con rồng đã có dành cho bên phía BLG Gaming. Con rồng đầu tiên của bản đồ, một con rồng gió. Đội hình của BLG Gaming Big có vẻ như đang giống test đội hình ấy anh em ạ. In rẹt đi rừng của Sun, 2 mạng rất khỏe ở đây. Hello 3 anh em siêu nhân nha.
Just because they have the Victor doesn't mean they want to be playing at arm's reach.
I mean, they basically become, at some point, if you get enough stacks on Kindred, you become Vayne with Caitlyn range. It just is a very hard champion to try to navigate against if he starts to scale. And Shun knows how to scale on this champion specifically. Again, one of his specialties, a 41-17 overall record. That's over 70% win rate, over 58 games. That's how you know a guy really likes this pick, and will want to pick it in any single possible situation that it could be valuable for his team.
It's a very dirty pocket pick this game. I think it does so much to answer the aggression from AL. There is still the potential. At the end of the day, if you're forced to use Kindred ult early, then just because you have Knight landing on top of you with the Galio doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be happy with the situation. So there are plenty of avenues for AL to play through, as now we do have attention being paid to these grubs. Shun is looking to back, as I think, yes, okay, AL are going to aggro, and Shun isn't going to cancel recall. That is going to be running off a base with the Kraken Slayer in pocket. I don't think there'll be anything to do over here on this side of the map, but that is a very, very scary Kindred at this point into the game. You need to be super careful if you get into a fight, particularly with that dragon spawning in 3 minutes.
Yeah, the silver lining, only 1 mark for Shun so far. If things had coin flipped a little bit better for him, it could be at 3, maybe even 4 at this point. But not going to really be much of a difference in terms of the damage he's able to provide against some of these players on AL at this point. Shun, I think you could argue, strongest player in the game at this point. Only one to have completed his first item, other than Tarzan, who now has just picked up the Protoplasm Harness. So maybe going to be difficult to kill the Sejuani, but everyone else certainly in danger if you're AL.
100%, and even the Sejuani will get torn up if given time to free hit for an elongated period. One of the things about this Protoplasm Harness that works so nicely with both Sejuani and Aftershock is if you do somehow get bursted out on Sej, which is really hard to do, then you're going to get incredible increased healing, because the heal from the second part of that lifeline passive scales with your resistances. So Sejuani, innately high resistances from the passive, and then once the Aftershock procs, even higher. Shun, though, is going to get the better end of this with a Raptor pickup. That was not a Mark Camper.
Raptor's a Raptor nonetheless. Surprisingly enough, Tarzan actually has the CS advantage at this point, although more standing camps for Shun to take at this very point, so you could consider it essentially even right now, and that is the state of this game, even. And we mentioned how AL likely want to be ahead early on, but Hope's in a good spot. We got Flandre already picking up that first kill, though he has now fallen behind in the CS department. BLG, I think they feel comfortable about where things are just due to the scaling that they eventually are going to have.
100%. I mean, for AL, you're kind of waiting for those big break points right now. You want that Triforce onto Hope. You want that first items onto Shank. First item onto Shanks. And then we can finally... Oh, that's a bad route.
Gets cancelled here with the Justice Punch. Arcane Storm coming out as well. Don't think this is going to be enough to kill Knight, especially not if he flashes away and allows for Shun to instead be the one to eat up the Dredge line. Glacial Prisons potentially going to be issued, and preemptive flash from On will make sure that everyone on BLG will survive.
Very, very much an overstep from BLG that is swiftly punished by realistically only 2 AL members needed. Tarzan just comes in to be the threat that says you can't re-engage, as Bin maybe the attention of some pressure, otherwise it will just be Tarzan continuing to play the Kindred minigame.
Dominus has been popped. AL have clearly telegraphed their next move, and that is a dive onto Bin on the top side. Knight does have the hero's entrance, going to use it to try to keep Bin alive as he goes between worlds and uses the weirding to chunk Flandre down to half HP. With Knight chasing after him, Flandre could potentially be in some danger, but there's not enough damage, not enough gap close to allow that to happen. So just going to be a stop of the dive from a BLG. They want to just make sure no more blood is shed in the top lane.
And they do secure that mark for Shun on the Kindred, which is also important. Hold on there, as he overstepped potentially.
For more too, and he dies away from the dredge line of Kyle. Protoplasm Harness has been procced, and there's a lot of stuns issued onto Shun. Can they burst him down before the ulti? No! The Lamb's Respite does come out, but it's a big numbers advantage right now in favor of anyone's legend as they are punishing this invade by BLG. True Shot Barrage going to come out. It takes down a member as the Renekton does fall, and Knight and Bin suddenly are able to make things work in the 2v3 situation. Knight down at 300 HP. Shanks issues the gravity well, but is unable to do a lot more damage onto the Galio, and both sides will retreat. Overall, a 2 for 2 with the help of Viper from long range.
But in a very bloody team fight, Shanks is going to be super happy on the victor. Gonna pick up a ton of passive stacks to further those evolves, who has so far, despite being on a scaling mage, had a really disgusting impact in all these skirmishes so far.
I mean, this was a very aggressive play from Shun. He was playing around with his food a little bit, and I think just kind of didn't realize the amount of firepower that AL still had left standing.
And On gets zoned away from the Kindred ult by Tarzan, pretty much just right-clicking onto him. But with all the important cooldowns already blown, despite being able to get rid of 2 early on, there's just not enough damage left to get through that shield from Bin's TP. Really sick Viper ultimate to clean up 1. And now we get a skirmish over Dragon. Both junglers are here.
Tempered Fate does delay On's death for a little bit, but it still should happen. And there's the snipe from downtown, sticking Shun into a glacial prison. A beautiful play from Tarzan Sejuani, as it's a 2 for nothing plus the Drake for the Pandas.
That's what we picked the Sejuani for right there. Smite secure into pick onto their opposite number. And now zoning for
6-4 dành cho AL rồi. Đấu này lại một đống kill rồi. 2 trận trước xỉu kill, trận này tay kill rồi anh em ạ. 2k2 vàng chênh lệch nghiêng về bên phía của AL.
To get ahead in the early game, otherwise they were going to get completely walked over. And I don't know if this is exactly enough, but I think this is at very least the right kind of start that we want to see if this is going to be the most dramatic game so far.
And every game in this series so far, Melvin, where a team has picked up a significant gold lead like AL have right now, it was not always a complete gold lead, right? In game number 1, it was the bot lane that potentially got a little bit ahead, but the rest of BLG were winning. In that last game, AL seemed like they had a lead, but there was like another side. This time, everybody on anyone's legend has a gold lead in terms of the gold that matters. Right now, On is the only one on BLG that actually is ahead in terms of income. That is a good sign for how AL are going to be able to use everybody on their team to start to snowball this one if they want to pick up this Game 3 win. As BLG don't really have an area of the map where they feel particularly advantaged in.
And short of something really stupid, if I'll be honest, in like the next 20 seconds, we're about to hit 15 minutes, And this will be the only non-Azir interaction where AL are walking away with leads in the solo lanes at 15 minutes. Which, as you're saying, is something different to what we've seen between these two teams so far. After that Gromp side skirmish, the most important objective in the game, as we all know, it kind of all went to a bit of chaos. And you know what? AL thrived in that chaos. They had their numbers there and were able to pick up enough that now, as far as quests go, they're all done over. We have Shanks with the Blackfire Torch, and if we get into another skirmish even half similar to that, this Victor is going to go positively crazy if BLG cannot one-shot them.
It's going to be a fun way. I'm very, very interested to see how the rest of this game plays out. Just because AL have a very interesting comp where their top side is very aggressive, but then maybe their main carries want to stay a little bit back, be a little bit more controlled. On BLG side, you have a very similar situation, a little bit of a mix of will they want to engage, will they want to kind of stay back. And so with the limited amount of full engage on either team, those tools just become even more important, whether it's Flandre on a teleport flank or maybe Knight coming in with a really good hero's entrance. Whoever is able to start the fight the best with very limited tools on both sides, I think is going to be in a better spot.
And one of the things that really will limit how much of getting onto that better side you can do is Xun's marks on this Kindred. Currently only at 2, means they are only halfway to getting that range increase, and currently still had Tarzan marked for the entire game so far, but that Protoplasm Harness keeping them alive in that skirmish on the top side. And if you don't get to that 4 marker soon, we're going to get to a point in the game where the map opens up, everybody's playing their side lanes, and there's basically no time where jungle camps are left alive. They're one shot off cooldown, whether it be by the nearby laner or by the jungle themselves, which makes it super difficult as Kindred to snowball marks if you don't get up to that 4 point at least, and then start having it spawn on the neutral objectives, where there's a bit more control in your pocket. It becomes really dangerous to run at the enemy Krog camp at 25 minutes when you know if the jungler dies, you could lose Baron and lose the game. You don't want to be on that half of the map, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if AL have the Kindred mark spawn down there and just don't touch it. Leave the camp up and say, alright, Xun, you're just kind of hard stuck at 3 marks now if you want to be. Walk in and die, or give us Baron, one or the other.
It's an interesting proposal. It's just the way that you're able to play around with this little mini game. Well, I like these little interactions that create interesting situations in terms of strategy, how these teams play the game. You know that Tarzan has experience basically playing any jungler. I mean, the Kindred is not necessarily the top of his tier list in terms of comfortability, but he's played a ton of games against it. He's played games with it, as it. So gonna have very strong knowledge as the leader of this team as to what exactly to do in these certain situations. We're currently, of course, waiting through a pause. Not entirely sure what is going on. We will, of course, update you guys as soon as we do. But it just adds to the tension, right? Because we're just waiting to see who ends up coming out on top. It's been a great series. It's been a great day of League of Legends so far, and it looks like we're gonna have that keep on rolling as we're back in.
Alright, just really try and milk the end of this series for what it's worth. Get the maximum amount of game time down. I'm okay with it. I feel like taking a breather at that particular point is the right time. We have now got confirmation it's Ocean Soul this game, which dragging out these team fights to make them even longer is going to be ridiculous. Something important I just saw pop up though. We have Riftheld spawning soon, but on finishes the Mikhails. Called out in Champ Select. This is so essential for trying to stop Tarzan getting the initial pick and running away with the team fight.
It's another interaction that we're planting the seed. It's maybe a Chekhov's gun situation where it's going to become a major part of how this game ends up unfolding. Will this tool, will Xun with the Lamb's Respite, a lot of abilities to try to negate that huge burst that is available when it comes to a Sejuani pick. Will any of that end up paying off for BLG, or will AL be able to find opportunities where BLG aren't able to use those full tools at will? Waiting for the next fight to fully unlock. Herald could certainly be the topic of conversation, as both junglers will interact there on the top side of the map.
You get very heavy trading into the mid lane. Bot ultimate down.
Speaking of tempered fate, it's actually going to land on the Hope, who now is exhausted and taking a lot.
Đây rồi, nào rồi, có mạng thất đao dành cho Viper. Viper Ezreal vẫn đang bắn. KL cần phải chạy nhưng mà chạy đi đâu? 2 mạng dành cho BLG Gaming. Trước thêm con sứ giả. Con Ezreal của Viper vẫn quỷ lắm anh em ơi.
I don't understand what we're doing here. Like, that's just incredibly greedy from the bot lane of AL. As we do get a collapse now, looking to try and at least get on.
Yeah, the teleport from Flandre is going to be first. He pops a Dominus on, going to be in some trouble as Tarzan is just fully targeting him in his own right in a 1v1. Knight going to land the Justice Punch on the Flandre, try to peel him out. The hero's entrance going to at least...
Flandre cần phải chạy. Rồi, sứ giả Tạc Tăng cướp được. Nhưng mà mạng của Flandre thì hơi khó. Tạc Tăng vẫn đang cần chạy thôi. Chạy đi đâu đây? Quay đầu là bờ, nhưng mà đây là quay đầu là vực. Lướt ra bên quê tường. Ui rồi, cung ánh sáng không trúng. Vậy là Tạc Tăng về được thành công. Phía bên này thì KL dịch chuyển đến, nhưng mà KL cần phải chạy. Cho mình luôn con sứ giả đứng giữa để lấy trụ bên phía BLG Gaming. BLG Gaming đang có vẻ là hơi say máu. Sẽ có cái trụ 1 toàn bản đồ dành cho AL mà thôi. Con Kim Red của Sun khỏe nhỉ. Pha này là muốn bắt vào Viper này. Viper dịch chuyển cổ học rất nhanh. Không những thế, On lại còn hóa vàng được hộp nữa.
It didn't end up amounting to much beyond Tarzan getting the miracle steal, and this is what I was kind of waiting to see. He has now finished the bagpipes. He has got bandle pipes in inventory. Crazy amount of value can be offered in this fight, considering with the Sejuani passive, even if you don't normally care about a Nautilus or a Renekton's attack speed,
Viper chơi Ezreal thì không ngang ngửa ruler anh em ạ. 19-1-10 là tin tưởng được con Ezreal này của Viper. Rồi vậy là đã có cho mình cái thật kiếm dành cho Ezreal này rồi.
Tarzan starting this up as AL try to gain control around the mid lane. Remember, they already took down that tier 1 with the Herald that Kyle was able to steal away from underneath BLG's noses. Billy, instead of opting for a 5v5, will try to trade gold on the opposite side of the map, taking down this tier 1 to try to fill Bin's pockets a little bit.
Very respectful and definitely correct from Flandre to not stand there under that tower. Normally a Renekton would be pretty durable, but when you're against Kindred ult plus Bard ult, there's just one too many tools to make it so you can't survive a dive attempt there. So, he's just going to be, as you said, very standard trade. Will put the Dragon lead in AL's favor. That means the longer this game goes on, the more and more pressure on BLG, and that was when we saw them falter at the end of game 2. Was a bit too much pressure looking down a soul point when AL was just able to play the objectives better.
It's going to come down to those objectives once again here, Melvin, as we're waiting for the Baron just about to spawn right now, again with that second dragon, I should say, being secured by anyone's legend. That'll become a big part of this game, and with the way that specifically BLG scales, despite now being at a slight gold disadvantage, I have a feeling that this one is going to go quite a while.
I wouldn't be surprised, especially if BLG are to take the game. I would expect at least another 10 minutes on the clock. AL, however, with the Baron alive, can look to force something at any moment, as that is a Nautilus TP bot lane. It is on vision. So, yeah, AL's there. Something about spells with supports.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta use it to get the next slot open, right? Like, at this point in the game, is teleport always useful on the support champion with spellbook? Not necessarily. So making sure you have an exhaust or something, maybe a little bit more beneficial. I don't know. I'm kind of coping here for Kyle.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
I think On's about to demonstrate. You know, maybe I'm cast a curse.
Yep, there you go.
That was it. I was gonna say,
All
no,
right.
I think I do like this from On because he chucked down all his wards and then insta TPs back onto the map. So you know, it is something. Kyle might have done the same thing, and I wasn't looking for it, but I don't know On did it. That's
I
the
do see
important
3
part.
wards in his inventory, so that very much could have happened. With gonna use those wards at this point to actually get
That is
vision around
not
the
a support
dragon,
TP.
or the Baron, I should say. Speaking of, on the top side of the map, it has been and Shanks engaged in a 1v1, and a teleport came in from Knight to try to cut off the rest of anyone's legends. Flandra now answered the TP of his own, popped to Dominus, and will look to try to engage on to BLG. Tempered Fate gonna slow up 3. There goes the Glacial Prison onto Shun, forces him back, and the first kill is on to the Victor, but now it's immediately traded back in a 1-for-1. Tarzan going to get singled out and taken down by 3 members of BLG, and Viper is 1v1ing Hope underneath his own area of the map. True Shot Barrage not going to connect with the weirding. Well, Bin finds the kill, and Billy Gaming get 4 for 1, and will head over to the big purple worm.
And it was Shanks trying to burn cooldowns to force Bin away, but the collapse from both teams it ended up being that Shanks died first, and as soon as that damage threat is down, AL are a bunch of beefy guys and a Szechuan and a Corky hitting you. It's not going to do much. So really solid from BLG to snap this one away. And we didn't get to see this bit. It was just trade of ultimates. But when the Victor doesn't have ultimate, that's one of his main tools to zone and slow down the BLG assault. And so when he gets split off to the side, Flandra does a good job of buying time. But as soon as that Nautilus hook is thrown, it is a chef's kiss Bard ultimate from On to separate the fight and stall for his carries to come in and collect the rest of it. And then, well, it's all curtains from here. Viper and Bin really wrapping up the play on the other side.
And so with the Baron, gold lead back into the hands of Billy Gaming. And remember, Melvin, they're the team that's starting to scale up. Shun dinging level 14. Now at 3 stacks, still looking for that 4th, but great situation for BLG to continue to add to their lead. And Knight might have found another pick. Shanks forced the flash away. He's able to get away from the Tempered Fate, but he had to run in the opposite direction. Will be able to survive for now. A lot of standing gold available on the map for BLG to try and pick up. Continue to try to stuff the pockets of their main carries and add to the gold lead that they currently possess.
Well, and it's going to make life really tough for Shanks and AL as a whole to play around in the next team fight. That Bard ult is going to be up quite soon. If BLG just play a slow dragon start, there's the potential to just take Shanks off the table before he even has a chance to play the game.
It's going to be about who can engage better here, Melvin. Remember, the tools for BLG in terms of finding fights aren't necessarily the most practical or the most easy to execute. Requires a lot of things going well, but so far that has been the case. As the Baron power play continues for another 75 seconds, it'll allow for BLG to march to the bottom lane, take down this tier 2 turret, add a little bit more gold into their inventories before this next dragon spawns. They want to make sure that AL do not have an opportunity to get to Ocean Soul Point at this point in the game.
And it looks like they're not even going to try and contest. Shanks on the top side without TP. I mean, I guess he's dragged Bin up to that side. The map is your asterisk, but it's a really tough angle for AL to try and get anything done here. Tarzan is stunned up.
Tarzan getting stunned up. He's forced to flash away. Kyle will match with the dredge line of his own. And BLG are just playing bully ball, making sure that AL have no way to get into the Dragon Pit. True Shot Barrage only chunking Flandra out, as Knight will not land that Justice Punch. AL threw out a lot of tools, but weren't able to find anything, as BLG will make their way back towards the Drake.
I mean, Kyle's defensive Nautilus hooks have been great, but that's not what you're picking Nautilus for at the end of the day. You want to be going forwards. You need to be going forwards, as now we have just more posturing from BLG. The Baron is about to time out. No extra camp secured for Shun, still stuck on that 3 mark. But at the end of the day, there is a gold lead over to BLG, an even dragon point, and the later the game goes, the more the scaling favors Viper and BLG, picking up now that endless hunger. This is one of the few champions that actually gets good value, because what he gets is ability haste that scales with his bonus AD, which between the Mure Mana and the Triforce is quite high. Yeah, this Ezreal is a bit of a Gatling gun, and if you do end up getting a kill, picks up even more Omnivamp off the back of it. So yeah, Viper's not even a really feasible target in a lot of this. So What do you do, AL? I don't know. I've not got a really good answer.
He's got to just find a pick. Make sure that any of those denial abilities from BLG are unable to be chained together, and just keep looking for fights like they're going to do so here. They land a stun onto On and Hope's able to back forward and one-shot the Bard before the Tempered Fate does land back down. So a big pickup onto AL's side to slow down BLG's continuation of a build-up of a lead, but there's no major objective to get in the 4v5 situation.
It's kind of reminiscent of old Tom Kench. If you don't kill the Bard this game, he will save whoever's with him. So you need to get rid of On first, as now we have a bit of posture, a bit of vision clearing, really. Just trying to retake any control on the map. When you're playing a pick comp, one of the most important parts is vision, because if you don't see your enemies, if you send everything for a pick and suddenly Knight is around the corner, suddenly Shun is right there chucking out the ultimate, then it's all over. It's all over.
Close game, close series between these two Titans. Remember, last time these two teams faced off, it was the second game of the season for both of them, and it was already a battle. BLG winning this one 2-1. These two teams went back and forth all of 2025. Eventually it was AL who came out with a better individual head-to-head record, but BLG certainly had their shine as well. Could this be the year BLG have their get back? Looking like it is a possibility, at least to open up the season with a season sweep in Split 1. But there's still work to be done. Flandre has popped the dominance. He's looking to get a kill onto Bin, and he uses the ultimate straight into the arms of Tarzan. It's going to be another big pick onto the BLG top laner as he gets shut down by the Sejuani with Baron up in 35.
That's perfect. Can we now get a second play to follow up? Because you won't be able to burn the Baron in that time, but you may be able to burn one of the BLG members, and we do see BLG playing incredibly respectfully off the back of that. Everybody bar Shun takes a reset, and now, I mean, Baron is about to spawn. AL's not touching that of a 10-foot pole, particularly when you're looking down a Bard ultimate, a jungler that's still alive, but now maybe we can fish for another play on the On.
Definitely is a viable target, but he has a lot of tools to deny. Has the Locket, has the Mikhails, had a heal, and of course that Tempered Fate makes it very difficult even to hit the Bard. So in terms of finding picks, AL running low on options. Bin was certainly an easy target, but now that he's gone, what do they do next?
And him being gone was a temporary countermeasure with the Baron on the table. BLG once again re-establishing all of that control on that top side of the map. AL was able to get a sliver of vision on the bottom side, which is now faded because they've had to re-establish control over their own top jungle. If you lose Baron, I think the siege from BLG will just kind of put you in the dirt for AL, because you can't run at them. It's so hard to run at this group as a 5-stack right now. Do have Dragon, 50 seconds. It's going to be probably a game-deciding fight off the back of it now. As we take a quick look down the flashes, it's only Flandre and On that do not have flash available. That means Shanks, Hope need to be ready to play around that Tempered Fate. They need to be constantly outputting damage and avoiding getting picked, because it's when they get picked is when AL loses the fight.
Another interesting thing to point out, 3 items completed for Shun, and he also has his 4th stack finally. So he's going to have that extra range around this potentially decisive engage on the 5th dragon on the bottom side. BLG currently have push in the mid lane. Tarzan trying to clear out vision without knowing.
Nào, tác văng vào vọng phá mắt rồi, bị Sun cấu máu. Ăn đâu?
But he's okay with that. Take a look at his items. He's got 4 completed ones at this point, going full support mode on.
Con rồng thứ 5 của bản đồ đang được BLG Gaming khởi động. Bên phía L quyết định là bỏ rồi, khi mà không có chỗ mình cái tầm nhìn ở đây. Đội hình của BLG Gaming trông cũng không có chống chịu đâu. Galio này là con Galio lên semi nên cái khả năng chống chịu không phải là quá nhiều. Nào, còn Baron, phút thứ 31 rồi, On đi cắm mắt. Phát hiện ra được vị trí của Kyle và Hope. Lịch chuyển đến từ vị trí của Flandre. Ôi, on flash lên luôn, on làm gì đây? On làm gì đây? Rồi, giữa hai thế giới 4 người là đẹp. Nhưng mà cái... Ôi rồi ôi, on ơi là on flash lên xin chết ạ.
BLG could just walk down mid if they want to here. There is the potential to go all the way to inhib. I mean, it looks like they're kind of splitting the difference.
Không biết nói gì, bao nhiêu lần rồi. Đợi on hồi sinh có vẻ là hơi lâu. Bên phía này thì sao? Viper. Cùng ánh sáng phát hiện ra vị trí Rande rồi. Bây giờ thì sao đây? Phía bên kia thì Knai đã phải bấm cho mình đồng hồ cát. Sun đang cần phải chạy, Bin cũng thế. Bên này thì Knai có được cái mạng của Flandre. Sun gọi dùng kịp cho mình là cái V. Nhưng mà hết xong thì chạy kiểu gì? Hope có được cái mạng của Bin. Bên phía này đang là 2 đánh 4. Viper vẫn đang cố bắn nhưng mà sắt đào đã có dành cho vị trí của xanh rồi. Còn một mình Knai mà thôi. Nhưng mà Knai thì cũng sẽ chết. Một pha rất ngu đến từ vị trí của on thì thằng on này. Đây anh em cùng xem lại pha tự dưng on flash lên. Rất khó hiểu luôn. Flash lên quy còn hụt ạ.
And then just wins the 1v1. I think even if we didn't have Knight land down here, there was a good chance that Viper just kills the Renekton who does not have ult available. And on the other side though, AL is able to super force because BLG oversteps a little bit. Shun comes in to try and save his top laner, but at that point you're both locked into the death chamber by these beefy boys on AL.
And as soon as you separate Knight and Shun, it makes that Lamb's Respite just a waiting game for your inevitable demise. As Knight, of course, had
mấy con lợn Billy Gaming nó bố đạn rồi.
Exactly what AL needed to take control once more of this decisive game, our final game of split 1.
Và Baron đã có dành cho AL. 3k vàng phút thứ 34 không phải con số quá nhiều.
Kyle and Hope waiting in the mid lane as Viper's trying to clear out that cannon. We're on the bottom lane. It is Tarzan trying to clear some stuff out. Both tier 2 turrets are going to have waves crash at the same time.
Đội hình của Billy nào dịch chuyển bọc sau đến từ vị trí của Bin. Ui rồi nhưng mà phía bên này thì Hope bắn chết Viper rồi còn đâu. Hope một con Corki bắn rất đau đi. Rồi sẽ là endgame mà thôi. Bên này Bin tìm thấy được Hope, có Bin có sắt đào nhưng mà on phải lên bảng đếm số. AL vẫn còn 4 người, về bên kia Billy Gaming chỉ còn lại 2 mà thôi. Tắc Tăng là không muốn cho Bin về. Vậy là AL pha này đang muốn kết thúc trận đấu hay không? Còn Corki quá khỏe, Corki 10-03. Cứ đánh trụ thôi. Hai con này lấy đâu ra đam. Rồi ok, vậy là AL có cho mình cái chiến thắng.
They get the win and they will claim first place in the LPL entering the postseason.
The fact that this game, this split, the regular season ends with Hope diving under tier 2 tower on the Corki and just deleting Viper was not to be predicted.
Hẹn anh em
The variance of Hope. When he's not playing well, he'll lose you the game. When he sees the angle, that secured the victory. Wow.
We had that in both games. It was on the Kaisa in game 2. It was on the Corki here in game 3. Without Hope's decisiveness, without his killer instinct. No, pun not included, pun not intention. They are able to take down Viper, who again was the